Our bones remember falling. There's a strange truth woven deep into the human body. Something ancient, something primal, something older than memory. It isn't in our thoughts or language. It's buried in our reflexes, in the shape of our bones, in the quiet way our muscles tense before a fall. Our bones remember falling. Have you ever stumbled on a step that wasn't there? That tiny moment when your heart jumps, your stomach flips, and your arms instinctively flail to catch balance. It's not just fear. It's not just surprise. It's an ancestral alarm bell ringing through your spine. You were never taught to react that way. No one showed you how to fall. But still, your body knows. That's evolution's fingerprint. Humans have walked upright for millions of years, but with that freedom came danger. To walk on two legs meant rising higher above the ground, and that made every fall more deadly. Our earliest ancestors weren't just battling predators or hunger. They were at war with gravity itself. And those who learned to fear the fall, to brace for impact, to survive broken bones, they passed that wisdom on, not in words, but in bone density, joint design, muscle memory. This fear of falling is not just emotional, it's biological. Scientists have found that infants as young as 6 months react with distress to visual cliffs, clear glass surfaces that look like drops. They haven't fallen. They haven't been hurt. But the fear is there, preloaded. As if somewhere in the blood is a memory not of their own fall, but of 1,000 before them. The shape of the human skeleton tells a story of survival. The way our feet flatten slightly when we fall, how our knees bend inward, how our wrists instinctively rotate to absorb shock. It's all part of a system built by millions of years of falling and getting up. Our ancestors didn't always have soft ground. A misstep on a cliff, a trip during a chase, or even slipping on wet rock could mean death. Those who didn't prepare didn't survive, and those who survived changed subtly, generation by generation. Even in modern life, where many dangers are cushioned by civilization, this instinct remains. Rock climbers and gymnasts talk about the fall reflex, a way the body contorts midair without conscious thought. Soldiers in training are taught how to fall safely, but often the body already knows. Dancers, too, describe falling as something you feel in your bones before your brain catches up. The most haunting part is this. People who have never experienced a serious fall still dream of falling. In fact, falling is one of the most common dreams reported across cultures and ages. A dream of the ground pulling away, of gravity reclaiming you. You wake up before you hit the bottom. Always. Why? Because maybe your brain doesn't want to relive the ancient trauma that your bones already remember. There's a reason why vertigo, the fear of heights, is so universal. It's not weakness. It's not irrational. It's survival. That swirling unease you feel on a ledge isn't just fear of the fall. It's the echo of every ancestor who didn't make it. Evolution doesn't forget. It rewrites us slowly, carefully. And the instinct to survive the fall is written into the very core of what it means to be human. Even our language reflects this deep connection. We say falling in love, falling apart, fall from grace. Falling is more than movement. It's a metaphor for losing control, for surrendering. Because somewhere deep in our evolutionary past, the fall meant death. And yet, in some strange poetic way, we have made it part of our identity. Some anthropologists even argue that the fear of falling influenced the design of early tools and shelters. Early humans chose caves not just for shelter from weather or predators, but because they offered solid ground, stability, protection from unstable slopes. Our early architecture wasn't just about building up, it was about preventing the fall. And now, thousands of years later, in a world where most of us aren't climbing cliffs or running through forests, our bodies still brace, still fear, still remember. You can see it in children learning to walk, in elderly people carefully placing each footstep, in athletes mid-air, in your own gut when you miss a step in the dark. Your bones remember, your spine remembers. Your nervous system is a recording of every fall that ever mattered. It's not just a reflex. It's not just evolution. It's a story etched into the frame of your body. A story about falling and surviving. There's also a psychological layer tied to this physical memory. People who have experienced trauma, whether from accidents, emotional shocks, or sudden loss, often describe a sensation like falling. It's not a metaphor they reach for consciously. It emerges uninvited, like their body recognizes collapse before their mind can name it. That gut-wrenching drop in your chest when bad news arrives, it mimics the physical sensation of falling because the same ancient alarm system is being triggered. Posture studies have even shown that people who live with anxiety or PTSD often carry themselves in subtly different ways. Shoulders tight, knees slightly bent, muscles prepared, always bracing for impact, even in stillness. It's as if the brain and body are waiting for the fall that hasn't come yet. This isn't imagination, it's embodiment, and it reveals just how deeply we are wired for impact. Think of a toddler learning to walk. Every fall is a lesson, not just in balance, but in resilience. In that brief collapse and recovery is a process of rewiring, a reinforcement of the ancient programming. Falling hurts. Falling teaches. Falling must be remembered. And every time they get up, they become just a bit more like the humans who came before them, those who endured and adapted. Even in technology, our fear of falling has shaped design. Cars have crumple zones. Phones detect sudden drops and lock to avoid damage. Parachutes, airbags, helmets, all inventions not to prevent falling, but to survive it. Because we know instinctively that what matters is not the fall itself, but how we respond to it. And maybe most beautifully, our bones don't just remember pain, they remember endurance. Every fracture healed, every stumble survived, every near miss turned lesson. Our skeletons are silent teachers, whispering warnings, but also reminding us, you've fallen before and you stood up again. So, the next time you miss a step and your body jolts, don't curse it. That's not just a panic response. That's evolution reaching through time to hold you steady. That's survival dancing just beneath your skin. Your bones remember, and they're still trying to protect you. And in a world that never stops moving, where we're always climbing towards something or running from something else, that memory might be the most human thing we carry. Because even when everything else fades, the bones remember. Brains that fear the dark. Darkness has always been more than the absence of light. It's a space where the brain stops seeing and starts imagining. The moment the sun slips below the horizon, something ancient stirs in us. Our heart rate quickens, our breath shallows. We become hyper-aware. The creak of wood, the rustle of leaves. Suddenly every sound is amplified. Not because we're irrational, but because we are wired to survive. Fear of the dark isn't weakness, it's a survival algorithm, one that's been running since long before we built cities, before we tamed fire, before language even had a word for fear. For our early ancestors, nightfall was not just inconvenient, it was dangerous. The darkness concealed predators. It was the hunting ground of saber-tooths, snakes, and unseen threats. You couldn't see the lion crouched in the brush, but your brain could sense it. Evolution taught us. Those who stayed alert in the darkness lived long enough to pass on their genes. Those who didn't. So, over tens of thousands of years, our nervous systems learned to react. Rapid heartbeat, dilated pupils, heightened startle reflex. These weren't quirks. They were armor. Even today, that programming runs in the background. Ever notice how horror movies use darkness not as a backdrop, but as a character? Filmmakers understand what evolution wrote into our nervous system. Darkness unsettles not just because we can't see, but because we know we can't know. Our minds fill in the blanks with worst-case scenarios. That feeling of someone watching you in the dark, that's not just paranoia, it's an echo of millions of years spent as prey. Your brain remembers, even if your conscious mind doesn't. Studies show that even modern humans experience increased cortisol levels in pitch-black environments. In one experiment, subjects were placed alone in dark rooms and told to sit in silence. Within minutes, many reported hallucinations, auditory and visual, whispers, shapes moving. The brain, deprived of sensory input, creates its own. It's like a survival simulation, run just in case. And it's not limited to fear. Some people feel seen in the dark, vulnerable. Because with vision gone, other senses rise, touch, smell, instinct. The brain becomes a radar, sweeping for danger. Children fear the dark not because they're silly, but because their brains haven't yet learned how to rationalize away that ancient terror. But the root isn't childish, it's coded into the species. Darkness has been the domain of death, predators, the unknown. It is the great blank canvas upon which we project everything we fear. In fact, it's so powerful that just dimming the lights in a room can shift your mood, your behavior, even your ethical decisions. A study at the University of Toronto found that people in dimly lit rooms were more likely to cheat, lie, or act dishonestly, because darkness offers psychological cover. But it's not all terror. Some mystics and philosophers argue that the dark is where truth lives, that only in shadow can we truly encounter ourselves. That's why sensory deprivation tanks are used not just to relax, but to confront the self. Alone, in the dark, you face not predators, but your thoughts, your regrets, your unresolved questions. And perhaps that's why we fear it even now. Not because of what's out there, but because of what's in here. When we turn off the lights, we are returned to our most primal form, just a consciousness floating in a void. Think about it. When we sleep, we do so in the dark. When we die, it's often described as a journey into darkness. There's something universal about it, something poetic. Darkness is both the beginning and the end, womb and grave. It is where we came from and where we may return. And yet, despite all our lights, all our security systems, all our modern knowledge, we still hesitate when walking alone at night. We still feel that tug in the chest, that urge to look over our shoulder. Because the dark is not empty. It is full of memory, of fear, of evolution's whispers reminding us that something once lurked there and might again. The brain doesn't forget what it learned on the savannah, huddled in firelight, waiting for the morning. So the next time you feel fear in the dark, don't shame yourself. Don't dismiss it. Understand it. Because that fear, it's ancient. It's earned. It's the reason you exist. Your ancestors survived because they listened to it, because they ran when others paused, because they imagined the worst and avoided it. And now, you carry that legacy inside your skull, coded into neurons, synapses, reflexes. You are, in a very real way, the child of creatures who were afraid of the dark and lived because of it. Even in a world flooded with artificial light, the shadows still matter. Because the moment the lights go out, your brain will remember. It always does. Heels built for running. The human heel is not a symbol of elegance or fashion. It is a survival mechanism etched by millions of years of fear. It was built not for pursuit, but for escape. In the wild theater of evolution, those who fled lived. Those who hesitated vanished. And so, our feet were shaped not to chase down prey like the claws of a lion, but to carry us as far away from death as possible, for as long as we could endure. The heel is not just a bone. It is a launch pad. It strikes the ground first with each stride, absorbing shock, transferring momentum, propelling us forward in a mechanical rhythm older than history itself. This unique anatomical feature, especially the calcaneus, our thick heel bone, works in harmony with the arch of the foot, an Achilles tendon, to create a biological spring, storing and releasing energy with every step. But it's more than biomechanics. It's biology's whispered reminder. Run first, ask later. Our ancestors didn't run on smooth tracks or synthetic treadmills. They ran through twisted roots, scorching plains, predator-shadowed valleys. Their lives depended on the efficiency of their escape. And so, natural selection shaped our heels for endurance, not bursts of speed. That's why we excel at long-distance running. The human body, stripped of fur, capable of sweating, with elastic tendons and strong glutes, is the marathoner of the animal kingdom, not the sprinter. We were never meant to outpace the lion. We were meant to outlast it. Take the persistence hunters of the Kalahari. These tribesmen track prey for hours, sometimes days, in sweltering heat, using nothing but their stamina and the structure of their feet. Their heels slam the ground with quiet power, driving them forward while their prey overheats and collapses. This isn't modern athleticism. It's prehistoric survival in action. Their bodies are echoes of ours. Their heels are shared inheritance. Modern life forgets this design. We bind our feet in stiff shoes, sit for hours, and forget the primal engineering beneath us. But it's still there. When you run barefoot on earth, you feel it. A hidden language in your bones. A memory of fleeing through the grasslands as something bigger and hungrier chase behind. Your heel hits the ground, your arch flexes, your tendons recoil. You are not running for exercise. You are running for your life, even if the danger is long gone. And it wasn't just predators we ran from. Fire, flood, other humans, a scream in the dark, a branch breaking where it shouldn't. The heel learned to respond before the brain even fully understood. That's why we jump when startled, why we bolt at a sudden noise, why the body flinches before the mind catches up. It is instinct embedded in flesh. The heel is not passive, it is primed. But ironically, in today's world, the heel has become a site of injury, plantar fasciitis, heel spurs, stress fractures. Why? Because the terrain has changed, but the blueprint hasn't. We walk on concrete, not earth. We wear cushions, not calluses. We ignore the signals evolution spent eons refining. In trying to comfort the foot, we weaken its purpose, and that purpose is not confrontation. The human frame is not built to fight large predators. We have no claws, no thick hides, no fangs. Our only hope was to flee intelligently, to detect threats early and escape them. This is why our heels are paired with upright posture and forward-facing eyes. To run, to observe, to vanish before it's too late. Fight or flight was never a fair choice. Flight was our advantage. Even in stories and myth, running is sacred. From Pheidippides' death run that inspired the marathon, to indigenous tales of spirit runners who carried messages between realms, the heel is the first step in human willpower. It's the beginning of every escape, every survival tale, every desperate bid to live one more day. Look closer, and you'll see it's not just the heel, it's the whole body conspiring to flee. The tendons snap tight like ropes. The spine aligns for efficiency. The eyes scan for the next foothold. The lungs expand with the rhythm of desperation. And the heel, silent, sure, and strong, slams down again and again like a war drum beating for survival. We may no longer run from tigers, but our fears have evolved. Today we run from deadlines, from grief, from the weight of the world pressing in. Still, the heel remembers. Still, it strikes the ground and tells us to move, to keep going, to run. Not because we're cowards, but because we are creatures born to survive. Our bones don't lie. Our heels were never meant to chase. They were built for the brave act of escape. And maybe, deep down, that's still what we're doing. Running from something we can't name, across landscapes both real and imagined, driven by an ancient rhythm, one heel strike at a time. Let it carry you. Speech born from desperation. It didn't begin with poetry. It didn't begin with stories around a campfire. Language, this beautiful, intricate web we use to express love, ideas, and art, was never meant to be beautiful. It was born in panic, in the frozen silence before a predator's attack, in the screams that tore through the night when danger loomed just beyond the firelight. Language came not as an ornament of civilization, but as a weapon of survival. Imagine the first utterance ever made by a human mouth. Not a word shaped by thought, but a raw, guttural cry, a desperate attempt to alert others. Run! Danger! Here! These weren't planned. They weren't discussed. They were expelled, involuntarily in the face of life or death. Early hominins didn't need sonnets. They needed sound that could pierce through wind and trees, cut through confusion, and provoke immediate action. That was speech. Not gentle, but jagged. Not constructed in peace, but forged in fire. Anthropologists trace the rise of language to moments of urgency. A child lost. A lion spotted. A rival tribe approaching with sharpened spears. In these moments, communication wasn't optional. It was everything. Those who could signal faster, clearer, more effectively, had better chances of survival. The brain adapted. The mouth evolved. And over time, that primitive scream became the foundation of vocabulary. Even today, the remnants of that desperation echo in us. Why is it that our most emotional moments, fear, rage, grief, strip away eloquence? We yell. We stammer. We revert. Our tongues, trained for subtlety, betray their origins. Under pressure, we fall back into rawness. That's because language was never designed for calm. It was designed to erupt. Take warning calls in the animal kingdom. Vervet monkeys have different calls for different predators, one for eagles, another for snakes, and so on. This isn't coincidence. It's the earliest form of survival speech. Now, imagine early humans observing this, building on it, refining it, not only to name dangers, but to deceive them. That's the darker truth of speech. It wasn't just about warning others, it was about manipulating them. A grunt could mean, look out, but it could also mean, look there, while stealing food. Words became tools not only of connection, but control. Social hierarchies were reinforced through verbal cues. False alarms tested trust. Over generations, communication layered itself with meaning, subtext, and power. Entire civilizations would one day rise and fall based on rhetoric and persuasion, but it all began with a scream. We like to think of language as noble, as the height of intelligence, but at its core, it is as primal as blood. Consider how children acquire language, not from reading Shakespeare, but from urgent need. A baby cries. That cry is answered. A toddler points, names, demands. Language enters not through logic, but through longing. Even our modern expressions betray this. The word please is rooted in if it pleases you, a phrase of submission. Sorry comes from sorrow, from fear of rejection or punishment. Much of our language is soaked in power dynamics. Requests, apologies, threats, promises. Politeness is ritualized fear. Praise is survival-based bonding. Insults are weapons honed through culture. Every sentence we utter carries echoes of ancient stakes. Think about how quickly language dissolves in crisis. A mother searching for her child doesn't speak in paragraphs. She shouts, cries, repeats the name. No pretense, no syntax, just need. That's where language was born. In need, in noise, in the unbearable silence before the scream. And what of manipulation? Persuasion is not just rhetoric, it's an evolutionary advantage. The one who convinces the group to follow a certain path survives. Leaders aren't always the strongest, they're the most convincing. They use words like arrows, stories like traps. Language became a battlefield long before it became a medium of literature. Religions rose through sacred words. Wars ignited from whispered rumors. Revolutions were born from pamphlets and speeches. Words are not passive. They are tools, bombs, bridges, blades, and behind every phrase is the ghost of that first desperate cry. We've wrapped language in culture, in ceremony, in education. But beneath all the grammar and poetry is a feral heart. When we speak, we're not just expressing, we're reaching back across thousands of years to those first terrified humans, crying out in the dark, hoping someone, anyone, would hear them and survive. Language didn't come from peace. It came from fear, from hunger, from loss. And that's what makes it powerful. Not its elegance, but its edge. Not its polish, but its pulse. Because when everything else is stripped away, when civilization crumbles, when systems fail, when the lights go out, it's not the essays that remain. It's the scream, the shout, the cry. And that, more than anything, is why we speak. Farming broke the body. When we think of the dawn of farming, we often imagine progress, fields of golden wheat, villages forming, civilization rising from the soil. But what if that same soil buried something darker? What if farming, for all its gifts, was also the beginning of the body's decline? This is the story not often told, the story of how agriculture, the invention that fueled empires, cities, and the modern world, also broke us down. It shrank us. It stiffened us. It shaped the way we suffer. Before farming, humans lived as hunter-gatherers. They moved constantly, hunting wild animals, foraging diverse plants. Their diets were rich, varied, unpredictable, but incredibly balanced. They walked miles every day, climbed, squatted, ran. Their bones were strong, their joints were used in full range. Archaeological studies show that early foragers had greater muscle mass, stronger femurs, and fewer degenerative joint diseases than the farmers who came after them. Then came the agricultural revolution. We planted seeds, and we planted ourselves. No longer roaming, we stayed in one place year after year, season after season. Crops became the center of life. But those crops weren't just shaping fields, they were shaping us. With the rise of farming, our diets became narrower. Grains became dominant, especially wheat, rice, and corn. And while they provided calories, they lacked vital nutrients. Skeletons from early farming communities show signs of malnutrition, stunted growth, weakened enamel, iron deficiency. Our average height dropped by several inches compared to our hunter-gatherer ancestors. Bones became more fragile, more prone to fractures. Teeth developed cavities from high-starch diets, and with sedentary life came farming required repetitive motion, hoeing, grinding grain, carrying loads, bending over for hours in the sun, the same actions every day, year after year. Over time, that repetition wore the body down. Evidence of arthritis, spinal compression, and joint degeneration became widespread in agricultural populations. The body was no longer used for variety, it was used like a machine until it broke. Even childbirth became more difficult. As diet declined, so did pelvic size. Meanwhile, crowded living brought disease, farming brought food, but it also brought famine. If one crop failed, the whole community starved. Unlike the hunter-gatherer's diverse options, the farmer bet everything on a few plants. And when they failed, the price was the body. And yet, farming didn't just shape the skeleton. It reshaped society. It created hierarchy. With stored grain came ownership. With ownership came inequality. The elite had better food. The workers bent their backs in the fields. And the body began to show its class. Bones from the wealthy showed fewer stress markers than those from laborers. Civilization advanced, but only for some. For the rest, the price was paid in joints, in teeth, in stature. Even today, the echoes remain. Our diets are still grain-heavy. Many modern health issues, obesity, diabetes, heart disease, can be traced back to this shift. Our bodies, designed for movement and variety, are now mostly sedentary. We sit, we slump, we stare at screens. But the foundation was laid long before smartphones. It began with the plow. And it's not just health, it's the way we live, our work, our routines, our social structures, all born from the decision to grow food in rows. So the next time you bite into bread, think of the trade. Civilization in exchange for a slower breakdown. Abundance, yes, but also imbalance. Because farming made the future, but it also broke the body. Anthropologists point out that farming changed even the shape of our faces. The hard chewing of raw plants and meats in the wild kept our jaws wide and our teeth aligned. But once we shifted to soft, cooked grains, our jaws shrank, while our teeth remained crowded. Wisdom teeth, once useful for chewing coarse material, now often need to be surgically removed. Farming didn't just alter what we ate. It restructured our skulls, and the consequences extended to culture. With settled life came ownership of land, competition for resources, and the formation of rigid social roles. Men and women, once equally active in hunting and gathering, began to divide tasks, often unequally. Physical burdens became gendered. Women's skeletons from early farming societies show stress fractures from repetitive grinding and lifting. Children, too, began working younger, their bones showing strain well before adulthood. In many ways, the body became a tool to be worn out for survival. The diseases of farming societies weren't just physical. Malnutrition changed brain development. Deficiencies in iron, vitamin D, and omega-3s, common in grain-heavy diets, affected cognition, mood, and emotional regulation. We built cities, yes, but we may have done so while sacrificing mental sharpness and emotional stability. Fast forward to today, and echoes of this shift still define us. We marvel at ancient ruins, cities built from early agrarian wealth, but we forget the bodies buried beneath them. Bent spines, worn hips, shattered knees, people who fed civilization at the cost of themselves. And we still haven't caught up. Our genes are mostly hunter-gatherer. Our biology expects movement, sunlight, variety, and unpredictability. But our environment is static, overfed, repetitive, and artificially lit. We've created a world our bodies never asked for. And yet, in small ways, we're remembering. The rise of interest in barefoot walking, intermittent fasting, resistance training, and even forest bathing reflects a quiet rebellion, a return to ancestral needs. We're starting to listen to the pain signals, to the stiffness in the morning, to the fatigue after long hours sitting. We're hearing the body whisper what it's always known. It wasn't meant for this. The irony is, the very intelligence that allowed us to tame the land may also allow us to heal from it, to blend the lessons of agriculture with the resilience of our hunter past. But that journey starts with truth, and the truth is clear. Farming made civilization, but it broke the body. Violence coded in hands. The human hand is a marvel of evolution, capable of painting masterpieces, building cities, and cradling the fragile. But beneath its grace lies a hidden history, one of survival, of violence, of power. The very structure of your hand, the arrangement of bones, the flexibility of the wrist, the way the fingers fold into a fist, tells a story written not in ink, but in blood. Our hands were not just shaped for creation, they were also forged for combat. Look closely at the way your fingers curl. When clenched, they fold in such a way that the knuckles align perfectly for impact, the thumb tucking safely across them to stabilize the blow. This isn't coincidence. It's biology sculpted by confrontation. The human hand, unlike that of other primates, has proportions and articulation that maximize force in a punch while minimizing injury to the striker. Our palms are shorter, our thumbs stronger, and our wrists more rigid when clenched. This makes the human fist a uniquely powerful weapon, one that evolution may have selected for. Think about that. For millennia, before guns, before swords, even before sharpened stone, there were fists. And in many cases, the difference between living and dying, between dominance and submission, was how well one could use them. Our ancestors didn't just use hands to hold tools or gather food. They used them to fight, to defend, to dominate. And those who fought well survived to pass on their genes that built stronger, better adapted hands. A study from the University of Utah examined this idea and found that the proportions of human hands allow us to form a tightly clenched fist in a way that other apes cannot. Chimpanzees, for example, have longer fingers and shorter thumbs, ideal for climbing but inefficient for punching. Their knuckles are used for walking, not warfare. But humans? We evolved to strike, and our wrists support that theory too. When the hand is clenched into a fist, the wrist locks into a sturdier, more stable position, perfect for delivering force without breaking delicate bones. Yet this adaptation came at a cost. Our hands became less specialized for climbing and more focused on manipulation and confrontation. They became tools not just of peace, but of power. In the same breath we invented art, we invented war. The same hands that shaped clay into gods also struck down enemies in rage. And even now, that duality remains. Watch any sport where aggression is channeled. Boxing, MMA, street fights. The fist still rules. It's instinctual. When we're afraid, angry, cornered, our hands curl without thought. That motion isn't learned. It's remembered. It's ancient. It's coded. But perhaps the most haunting aspect is this. Our hands also evolved for gestures of peace, to touch, to hold, to offer. The open palm is universal, an ancestral signal of trust, of non-aggression. The same thumb that braces the knuckles can also gently brush away tears. The same fingers that crush can also comfort. It's a contradiction built into our anatomy, a sacred tension between creation and destruction. Consider history. How many empires were built by hand? How many lives ended with a clenched fist, or were saved by an outstretched one? Think of revolutions sparked with a single strike, or leaders brought down with a single blow. The hand is a political tool, a social tool, a violent tool, but it is also a healer. Even in the quiet rituals of religion, the hands play a vital role. We kneel, we clasp them, we raise them to the sky, we anoint, we pray. But in another time, another place, those same hands might have been clenched, dripping with blood. We punched as much as we prayed, and perhaps we still do. In the modern world, civility wraps our fists in gloves. We shake hands instead of striking. We clap instead of clawing. But the memory is still there. The hand remembers. In moments of extreme emotion, it reverts. Think of how tightly you've clenched your fists in rage or fear, sometimes without even noticing. That's not weakness, that's legacy. Civilization may have blunted the edge, but it did not erase it. The potential for violence is still within us, not as a flaw, but as a feature. It is part of what made us survive. The challenge now is to understand it, not deny it, because suppression is dangerous, but awareness is power. So the next time you look at your hands, ask yourself, how much of your past is still alive in your grip? How many of your ancestors fought with these bones? How many times did survival come down to one strike, one punch, one moment of raw physical will? The truth is unsettling, but it's also beautiful. Your hands are living fossils. They carry the story of humanity's struggle against the world, against each other, and sometimes against ourselves. They built, they broke, they bled. And somehow they also learned to hold, to heal, to love. Violence is not all we are, but it is undeniably part of what we were, and the bones remember. Dreams of predator shapes. We still dream of predator shapes. Serpents coiling in the shadows, spiders descending in silence, the stomach lurch of an endless fall, because these were the threats that once co-authored our survival. Evolution never forgets a near-death story. It etches them into our deepest code, disguising them as dreams. Imagine your ancestors, not in houses, but in caves. Not surrounded by walls, but by darkness. The hiss of a snake could mean death by venom before medicine. The glint of spider eyes might signal danger in a hidden crevice. A misstep on a high cliff meant extinction. Those who learned to fear these shapes, to see them even with eyes closed, were the ones who woke in time, the ones who lived to pass on their genes. And so, their fears became ours. Even now, when we sleep safely behind locked doors, our brains rehearse ancient dangers. In REM sleep, when logic takes its leave and emotions reign, the amygdala, the brain's fear center, fires like it's under attack. We're paralyzed not for fun, but for safety. Evolution designed this paralysis to prevent us from leaping off cliffs or stabbing shadows. In this dream world, we become both prey and witness, and the threats are rarely modern. Not guns, not taxes, but things with too many legs, things with fangs, things that slither. This isn't coincidence, it's psychological inheritance. Studies show that people are faster at detecting snakes than flowers, spiders than butterflies, even when both are shown for milliseconds. Children who've never seen a spider still react with fear. It's hardwired, because 100,000 years ago, not noticing a snake could kill you. Not noticing a flower, that could wait. And the falling? That's not metaphor. It's gravity reminding us how easily life ends. Our dreams of falling are not symbolic of failure. They are echoes of cliffs, of missed branches, of predators pushing us into oblivion. That moment when you wake up with a jolt, heart racing, gasping for breath, that's your brain replaying the price of a single mistake on ancient ground, not a story, a survival simulation. Even today, the most common nightmares worldwide aren't about car crashes or nuclear war. They're about being chased, about being watched, about something moving beneath the bed, just out of sight. That's not culture, that's evolution whispering. Your mind, in its most vulnerable state, drags forward the threats that nearly ended the bloodline. It doesn't matter if you've never seen a snake in the wild, your DNA has. And yet, there's something poetic in this. Our fears are the very reason we're here. The shapes that terrify us in sleep are the reasons we woke up at all. They are shadows we must thank, enemies we owe our lives to. So, the next time you dream of a snake or feel yourself falling through the void, don't be afraid. That's not weakness. That's your mind remembering the jungle, the forest, the cliffs. It's not trauma, it's legacy. You are the descendant of survivors, and their nightmares still run in your veins. The loop of overthinking. The gift of thought was never free. Somewhere along our evolutionary path, when our ancestors began looking beyond the immediate, beyond tooth and claw, fire and rain, we crossed a line. We gained the ability to anticipate, to imagine, to plan, but we also unlocked something darker, the mind's ability to trap itself. A loop of thought, a spiral without exit, overthinking. It begins with a small question. Did I say the wrong thing? Did they misunderstand? Was that the right choice? Harmless at first, but then the loop tightens. The brain doesn't just answer, it speculates, it rewinds, it simulates every possible alternate version of reality. What if I had chosen differently? What if I fail? What if it happens again? The brain, too large for the moment, stretches the present until it breaks, and suddenly, you're no longer living. You're rehearsing, replaying, rewinding. This isn't what evolution prepared us for. The minds that survived prehistory were designed to scan the savannah for danger, to plan the hunt, to detect betrayal in a rival's eyes. Thinking was a survival mechanism. Worry meant caution. Fear meant alertness. Regret meant learning. But in a modern world where tigers are replaced by deadlines and predators by judgment, The ancient circuits still fire, and now they misfire. You replay conversations from hours, days, even years ago. Why? Because your brain believes there's something to fix, some hidden meaning to extract, some social threat to neutralize. But the past is a closed door. No matter how many times you knock, it won't reopen. Still, the brain circles back, again and again. And then there's the future, the mirage we try to predict. The mind runs scenarios, hundreds of them, all ending in failure. You plan for every outcome, every word you might say, every glance you might receive. You over-prepare, yet never feel ready. That's the paradox. The more you think, the less you act. Overthinking paralyzes. It convinces you that certainty is a prerequisite to motion, when in truth, certainty is an illusion. You can prepare forever and still never begin. That's the trap. Your brain, meant to help you act, becomes the reason you don't. We envy animals for their simplicity. The cat doesn't lie awake at night, wondering if it offended the other cat. The deer doesn't replay the moment it fled too early or too late. They respond. They move. They survive in the now. But we, cursed with imagination, drown in what-ifs. Even love becomes a battleground of the mind. You analyze texts, decode tone, reconstruct silence. You try to read thoughts that were never written, and in doing so, you forget to feel. You forget to be. Regret anchors us to the past. Anxiety pulls us into a fabricated future. And in between, a present moment too blurry to hold. That's what overthinking steals, the now. The only place where life actually happens. But this isn't weakness. It's not a flaw in your character. It's the byproduct of a brain too powerful for its container. An engine built for survival, now revving without direction. You were built to think just enough to act, not to spiral. The loop often feels unbreakable. Thoughts repeat with the same cadence, the same voices, the same fears. But you are not your thoughts. You are the awareness behind them. You can observe them without obeying them. You can hear the noise and still choose silence. It takes practice. It takes pain. But it also takes recognition that this loop is not your identity. It is a habit, a pattern, and patterns can be broken, not all at once, but moment by moment, breath by breath. You were given a mind capable of infinity, but you were also given a body rooted in the now, the heartbeat, the breath, the senses. These are anchors. The world will not stop spinning because you do. And sometimes, the most courageous thing is to let go of needing to know everything, to release the urge to fix what was, to resist the panic to control what will be, and to simply exist, without needing to explain why, because thought was never the goal, life was. And overthinking, this loop of imagined threats and invisible burdens, is just your brain trying to protect you. But you're not in danger anymore. You can stop running the simulation. You're already here. Periods of evolutionary pain. Every month, for billions of women around the world, pain arrives like clockwork. Cramps, fatigue, bloating, emotional swings, an entire internal storm that comes not from illness but from biology. Menstruation is often seen as natural, necessary, and even symbolic. But behind the cultural rituals and health classes is a brutal truth. Menstruation is biologically inefficient, painful, draining, and yet it remains. Why? Because evolution isn't about comfort, it's about survival. And more than that, it's about reproduction. The human menstrual cycle is unique among mammals. Most mammals don't bleed the way humans do. Instead, they reabsorb the uterine lining if pregnancy doesn't occur. It's quiet, it's efficient. But humans shed it, loudly, messily, painfully. Why? To answer that, we need to look at how evolution balances cost against reward. In evolutionary terms, anything that takes energy, weakens the body, or increases risk should be selected against. Menstruation uses enormous energy. It exposes the body to infection, it leads to iron loss, it weakens, and yet, it persists. Because for early humans, a thick, rich uterine lining gave a higher chance of supporting early pregnancies. Human reproduction is messy and fragile. Our babies are born less developed than other species, with larger brains and longer dependencies. So, our biology doubled down. Build a thick lining, prepare the body, and if pregnancy doesn't happen, tear it down and try again. Monthly. The pain was the price. And evolution doesn't care if the cost is pain, if the outcome is more successful reproduction. If something helps pass on genes, even a little, it stays, even if it hurts. But that doesn't mean it's perfect. In fact, menstruation is one of biology's most brutal compromises, a system that bleeds, that cramps, that damages quality of life. And yet, society often brushes it aside, normalizes it, romanticizes it. But for many, it is not just discomfort, it is agony. Conditions like endometriosis, polycystic ovary syndrome, PCOS, and premenstrual dysphoric disorder, PMDD, affect millions. Yet they remain under-researched, undertreated, underfunded, because menstruation in many ways has been treated as an inevitable tax on being female. But biology is not destiny. Evolution is not design. It's trial and error across millions of years. And sometimes, what survives isn't what's best. It's what didn't fail fast enough. The cycle stays because it works just enough. But that doesn't mean it's optimal or fair. And now, modern medicine begins to ask, can we do better? With hormonal regulation, menstrual suppression, and ongoing research into the root causes of menstrual disorders, we are slowly beginning to treat what evolution never bothered to fix. Because evolution isn't a doctor, it's a filter, a cruel, patient one. So the next time someone says it's natural, remember, so is suffering. Nature doesn't prioritize comfort, only reproduction. And menstruation is a monthly reminder that biology tolerates pain if it means passing on life. This isn't weakness, it's endurance. And that makes it all the more powerful. Some evolutionary biologists believe menstruation may have emerged as a way to cleanse the reproductive tract of pathogens introduced by sperm or the outside environment. But this theory has been debated. The cost of regular blood loss, pain, and energy depletion far outweighs any minor cleansing benefit. Others argue that the shedding of the uterine lining prevents the risks of continuously thick tissue, which can attract harmful cells if left too long. Still, none of these fully explain why humans evolved to bleed so regularly. Bonobos don't bleed, gorillas don't bleed. Even our closest relatives, chimpanzees, experience only minimal spotting. So why do humans bleed for days? Why do we carry the pain like clockwork? Part of the answer may lie in the extreme selectivity of the human body. Our reproductive system is cautious. The womb builds a perfect nest, then ruthlessly destroys it if conditions aren't ideal. That monthly destruction releases prostaglandins, chemicals that trigger muscle contractions to expel the lining. But they also cause inflammation, pain, and nausea. The system sacrifices comfort for efficiency. And yet, modern life makes the pain worse. In pre-industrial societies, women often spent more of their lives pregnant or breastfeeding, which reduces the number of menstrual cycles. Today, with fewer pregnancies and later childbirth, the average woman experiences over 400 periods in her lifetime. That's 400 cycles of bleeding, pain, and hormone swings. Our ancestors likely experienced half that number, or even less. That means modern women are exposed to more cumulative inflammation, more blood loss, and more hormonal stress than evolution ever planned for. Meanwhile, access to treatment remains unequal. In many cultures, menstruation is still surrounded by shame, stigma, or silence. Girls are taught to hide their pain. Workplaces ignore it. Medical systems minimize it. The result? A deep mismatch between how serious menstruation feels and how lightly it is often treated. And yet, behind that silence is strength. Because despite the pain, the fatigue, the unpredictability, life continues. School is attended. Jobs are worked. Families are raised. Athletic records are broken. Political battles are fought. All while managing a cycle, biology refuses to make painless. And in that endurance is a quiet kind of power. It reminds us that what evolution accepts isn't always humane. That survival doesn't mean comfort. That the human body is filled with ancient trade-offs. And menstruation is one of the oldest. But with knowledge, science, and empathy, we can challenge what nature refused to fix. We can research better treatments. We can design tools and policies that acknowledge this reality instead of burying it. Because suffering shouldn't be the cost of creation. And evolution may not care, but we can. Meat turned us violent. There's a dark origin to human intelligence that we rarely confront. Not found in poetry or temples, but in blood. In marrow, in meat. The truth is unsettling. We didn't rise to dominance because we were kind. We rose because we were hungry, because we killed, because we tore muscle from bone and rewired our minds with every bite. Our intelligence was not born from peace, but from pursuit. For millions of years, our ancestors were prey, small, fragile scavengers picking at the edge of the food chain. But something changed. Not overnight, but across thousands of hungry winters, barren landscapes, and silent stalks through tall grass. They began to eat meat, not as a last resort, but as strategy. They cracked bones for marrow. They sharpened rocks to tear sinew. And with every successful hunt, their bodies changed. So did their minds. Meat is calorically dense. Compared to roots and berries, it's a shortcut to energy, a fire hose of fat and protein. With it, our brains could afford to grow. Literally. The human brain consumes around 20% of our body's energy at rest. No other species fuels such a demanding organ. But it's not coincidence. Meat gave us that fuel. Without it, we might never have evolved the ability to think abstractly, to problem solve, to imagine. But with that growth came something else: aggression. Predators must outwit prey. They must track, deceive, corner, and kill. These aren't passive acts. They require intention, focus, violence. And so, as we hunted, we became hunters, not just physically, but mentally. Cooperative hunting fostered social bonding, but it also sharpened tribal instincts. Us versus them. Food versus famine. Safety versus slaughter. We began to organize around territory, hierarchy, and dominance. And when food was scarce, when meat was the only thing between survival and death, we turned that aggression on each other. Anthropologists have found evidence of early human violence, not just in prey remains, but in the bones of other humans. Skulls bashed in, spears through rib cages. Cannibalism, not as ritual, but as necessity. Hunger teaches cruelty. It teaches calculation. It teaches that the line between flesh to eat and flesh to be is thinner than we'd like to admit. Even our tools reflect this evolution. The earliest stone implements weren't made to build. They were made to butcher. Flint knives, scrapers, axes, they tell the story of a species that learned precision through incision, that carved its future with bloodied hands. Tool use and meat eating co-evolved. And as we became better hunters, our minds became better engines of strategy and violence. But violence wasn't just about survival. It became culture, ritual, entertainment. Gladiator arenas, sacrifices, war. Even today it lingers. In contact sports, in crime, in stories. Why do we cheer for vengeance in movies? Why do we slow down at car wrecks? Because somewhere deep in the folds of our evolved brain, violence still feels familiar. It feels like home. Our hunger didn't just shape our brains, it shaped our morality. We developed empathy, yes, but often only for those within our tribe. Outsiders, rivals, competition for resources. Evolution taught us to dehumanize, to take, to kill. And over time, we buried that under layers of civilization. But it's still there. Press your hand to the base of your skull. That brainstem controls reflexes built in the savannah, in the hunt. You are not separate from your violent ancestry. You are its continuation. Even now, studies show that the sight of raw meat triggers increased salivation and arousal in many humans. Not because we're monsters, but because our biology remembers what meat meant: survival, strength, victory. And hunger wasn't just physical, it was existential. It forced us to move, to adapt, to innovate. Those who sat still died. Those who hunted lived. It was that simple. So when we look at modern intelligence, our cities, our technology, our art, we must understand its root. It doesn't come from serenity. It comes from struggle. It was sharpened, not in monasteries, but in mud and blood. We are clever because we had to be, because hunger taught us to plan, because meat demanded tools, and tools demanded thought. This doesn't mean we are doomed to violence, but it means we must recognize where it lives, in our hands, in our reflexes, in our stories. We carry it like a scar beneath skin, hidden but not gone. The choice now is what to do with it. To ignore it is to misunderstand ourselves, but to understand it, that's where power lies. We are the species that hunted its way into consciousness, that chewed marrow and tasted meaning, that used violence not just to survive, but to evolve. We are not gentle by nature. We are capable of gentleness because we chose to rise above nature. But never forget, your brain was sharpened by hunger, not kindness. Back pain from standing. Back pain isn't a modern ailment. It's a primal flaw, one baked into the very structure of our bodies the moment we stood up and defied gravity. We were never meant to walk upright so confidently. We did it anyway. And now, our spines bear the consequences with every aching step, every long hour we stand, every moment we pretend to be creatures of perfect posture. The human spine is a compromise, a balancing act between ancient needs and modern ambitions. It began millions of years ago when our ancestors climbed down from trees and began walking on two legs. Standing up gave us vision over tall grass, freed our hands for tools and fire, allowed us to gesture, to communicate, to become who we are. But evolution is slow, and compromise leaves scars. Our spines were once built like suspension bridges meant for horizontal life. Four-legged creatures share the burden of gravity across limbs. But humans? We ask our vertical column of bones and discs to hold up the entire structure, head, torso, expectations, while resisting a downward force that never quits. The result is a delicate S-shaped curve that fights for balance, and often fails. This shape, while essential for shock absorption, is also a point of weakness. The lower back, the lumbar region, is especially vulnerable. It wasn't built to carry the load of modern life. Sitting for hours, standing still on concrete, lifting things in ways our ancestors never dreamed of. Instead of hunting or gathering, we slump over desks, carry backpacks overloaded with tech, and contort ourselves into chairs made for appearances, not anatomy. Chronic back pain affects more than 80% of adults at some point. That's not a coincidence. It's an evolutionary tax. One we pay for our intelligence, our ambition, our upright pride. The very act of standing still is unnatural. Our muscles must fire constantly to stabilize the spine. And unlike walking, which distributes motion and pressure, standing locks our body into a strained equilibrium. Blood pools, discs compress, joints tighten, and the back begins to scream. We were made to move, to shift, to balance dynamically, not to freeze. Yet our daily lives demand stillness, standing in line, working in retail, performing jobs that keep us rooted like statues. The pain that creeps into our spine is not a failure of will, it's a revolt against biology. And even more cruelly, the damage compounds. When the spine starts to fail, other systems suffer. Nerves get pinched. Discs herniate. Posture collapses into protective curves, causing hips and knees to adjust, spreading pain like a chain reaction through the body. What began as a simple evolutionary trade, 2 legs for freedom, becomes a lifelong negotiation with pain. But the truth is, evolution never finished the job. Our spines are transitional, caught between the creature that once ran on all fours and the future form we are still becoming. We are standing apes, not perfected beings, and the bones that try to hold us up whisper this secret every time we wince. Yet somehow we endure. We design ergonomic chairs, posture-correcting braces, stretching routines. We seek yoga, massage, inversion therapy, all in an effort to convince our ancient structure that modern life is survivable. But deep down, our bodies know. Standing tall comes at a cost. The pain is not weakness, it is a signal. A reminder that we're still evolving, that every moment we walk upright is both a triumph and a tension. We're defying gravity with each breath, resisting collapse with each step. Our backs carry the weight of our entire story, and sometimes they cry out under its burden. So, if your spine aches after standing too long, don't curse it. Listen, it's the echo of 1,000,000 years of adaptation and imperfection. It's the price we pay to reach for the stars with the feet planted on the ground. And it's a signal that, though evolution gave us 2 legs, it left behind a reminder that we were never quite finished. Genes, remember the plague. It's buried deep in your blood, evidence of a war you never fought, scars from battles your ancestors barely survived. Not carved into stone, not recorded in history books, but encrypted in the silent code of your DNA. Some of us walk with invisible armor, immunity born not from vaccines or modern medicine, but from pandemics so old their names have been swallowed by time. Our genes remember what our minds have forgotten. Long before cities, before written language, before gods and nations, disease was already shaping humanity. Viruses and bacteria, tiny, unseen killers, swept through early tribes like wildfires, leaving behind devastation, but not always total. Some lived, not because they were lucky, but because they carried something others didn't, a genetic mutation, a tiny difference, a single letter in the long book of human code that made them just resistant enough to survive. And those who survived passed it on. The Black Death, for example, killed nearly half of Europe's population in the 14th century. But in its wake, something strange happened. Certain populations developed mutations in genes like CCR5, variations that made them more resistant not only to plague, but to future threats like HIV. This isn't coincidence, it's memory. Not the kind you think with, but the kind your cells whisper through generations. Our bodies remember what nearly wiped us out. They adapted, they evolved. And in that adaptation lies a brutal kind of hope. It's easy to think of evolution as a slow, gradual drift. But pandemics create pressure. Sudden, violent pressure. Only those with the right genetic tools could survive long enough to reproduce. That pressure forged a version of us that could stand up to invisible enemies. Every person alive today is the child of someone who got through it. Someone who didn't die in the first wave or the second. Someone whose body fought back and won. Barely. Your blood carries those victories. The same genes that once saved a tribe from a wave of smallpox may now protect a descendant from modern diseases. In West Africa, genetic resistance to malaria persists through a mutation that also causes sickle cell disease, a devastating condition, but one that also tells a story. That survival sometimes comes at a cost. We carry not just immunity but echoes of ancient choices, of what was risked, of what was lost. Geneticists can now look into your DNA and find traces of past plagues, what diseases your ancestors faced, and whether they lived through them or died in their shadow. And sometimes, even behavioral traits were forged in pandemics, tendencies toward cleanliness, fear of strangers, hypervigilance. Cultural norms that once saved lives became tradition, became identity. And yet, immunity is never universal. What saves one lineage may doom another. That's the cruelty of disease. It doesn't care for justice. But what it leaves behind, what it edits in our genes, is permanent. It's why some bodies react differently to the same virus, why some fall and others stand. Behind every immune system is a battlefield, and behind every survivor, a long line of genetic victories. This also means that modern pandemics, COVID-19 included, are still shaping our evolution. Somewhere, someone who survived severe infection had just the right immune response. They'll pass that down. Maybe to a child who won't even know what the virus was. Maybe to a great-grandchild who will never get sick at all. Because of them. Because of now. It's a haunting thought that the price of human progress was often measured in lives lost to things we couldn't see, that civilizations rose not just on the backs of warriors or kings, but on the backs of survivors, of bodies that endured what others could not. And now, inside you, that legacy remains. Your immune system isn't just a biological defense, it's a living museum of past horrors. Your antibodies, your cellular memory, your genome, they all bear the fingerprints of pathogens that tried to erase your lineage, but they failed. And that's why you're here. The future wasn't built by the strongest. It was built by the resistant, the lucky, the slightly mutated, the ones whose blood could hold the line. Every breath you take is proof that your body remembers. That disease shaped not just history, but identity. That somewhere in your code is the story of how humanity endured, and it's still being written. Thirst for salt kills. Salt. It's in our blood, our sweat, our tears. It's on every table, in every snack, and woven into the fabric of every craving. But the story of salt isn't just culinary, it's evolutionary, and it's killing us. Once, the human body's thirst for salt was a survival mechanism. Salt helped regulate blood pressure, preserved muscle function, and balanced hydration. In a world where salt was scarce, where food didn't come with labels or additives, craving salt was the body's way of staying alive. But evolution made one critical mistake. It didn't plan for abundance. The craving never turned off. In prehistoric times, salt was a rare and precious mineral. Our ancestors would walk miles for it, trade valuables to get it, and celebrate its discovery like gold. Because without salt, the body shuts down. Nerves misfire, muscles cramp, blood pressure drops. Death comes quickly in a salt-starved body. So evolution programmed us to love it, to seek it, to chase even its smallest traces. That drive worked when salt was rare. But now, salt is everywhere. In chips, canned food, sauces, bread, cheese, fast food, frozen meals. It hides in places you wouldn't expect. A slice of bread, a bowl of cereal, a salad dressing. We've turned survival instinct into daily overdose. The average person today consumes far more sodium than the body needs, sometimes double or triple the recommended amount. And the consequences are devastating. High salt intake leads to water retention, which increases blood volume. That raises blood pressure. Constantly elevated pressure strains arteries, damages the heart, and weakens kidneys. It's a silent killer. Hypertension doesn't scream. It whispers until it's too late. Heart disease, stroke, kidney failure, all linked to salt. And yet, we keep craving it, because the same evolution that built our bones and brains also built our addictions. Our love for salt is deep, primal, and hard to fight. Some researchers even compare it to drug cravings. The brain lights up in the same reward pathways. A salty snack doesn't just satisfy hunger, it rewards you chemically, and that feedback loop can become nearly impossible to break. The food industry knows this. Salt enhances flavor, preserves shelf life, and increases consumption. It's cheap, powerful, and nearly invisible. That's why it's used so freely, because it keeps you coming back, and cutting it out is hard. Our palates have been trained from childhood to expect salty food. Low-sodium options taste off. People often don't realize how salted their meals are until they try going without. It's a recalibration process that takes weeks, sometimes months. But it's necessary. Because the damage builds slowly, year after year, and for some populations, especially those genetically predisposed to hypertension, the risk is even higher. African, South Asian, and indigenous communities show disproportionately high salt sensitivity. For them, a normal salt intake can mean decades of elevated risk. Salt once saved us, but now, in a world of abundance, it betrays us. Our biology hasn't caught up. Evolution didn't install a shut-off switch. It simply rewarded what was rare. But we live in a world where salt isn't rare, it's everywhere. And so our biology works against us. Unless we intervene, education, labeling, awareness, flavor retraining, these are modern tools that evolution never gave us. We have to choose them, consciously, because instinct alone can no longer be trusted. Salt is not evil, it's essential. But the line between enough and too much is razor thin. And on the other side of that line waits disease. So, the next time you reach for the salt shaker, ask yourself, am I feeding hunger or feeding history? Because your ancestors craved salt to stay alive. But now, that same thirst might be what kills you. And it's not just about the individual, it's about public health. Globally, excess salt consumption is one of the leading dietary risk factors for premature death. According to the World Health Organization, reducing salt intake could prevent 2.5 million deaths every year. Yet change remains slow, because salt is more than just a nutrient. It's habit, identity, economy, and culture. Salt shaped history. It built empires. The word salary comes from sal. Roman soldiers were partly paid in salt. Salt routes shaped ancient trade. Wars were fought over it. Cities rose because of it. In some parts of the world, salt was worth more than gold. It preserved meat, allowed long-distance travel, and helped civilizations grow. Its power is undeniable, but that same power now feeds a modern crisis. Processed foods, even those marketed as healthy, often hide large amounts of sodium. Sports drinks meant for hydration, salted. Plant-based meat substitutes, salted. Restaurant meals often contain an entire day's worth of sodium in one sitting. And because salt doesn't always taste overwhelmingly salty, especially when paired with sugar or fat, we don't even realize how much we're consuming. And here lies the true danger. The damage salt does is slow. Decades can pass before symptoms emerge. Blood pressure rises gradually. Arteries harden silently. Kidneys weaken quietly. By the time you feel it, the harm is already done. And while sugar has earned its place in public debates around obesity and diabetes, salt quietly lingers in the background. Deadly, but under-discussed. The good news? The body is remarkably resilient. Within just weeks of reducing salt intake, blood pressure can drop. Taste buds recalibrate. Cravings ease. The heart begins to relax. The kidneys regain function. The body, long abused by salt overload, begins to heal. But that first step requires knowledge, awareness, willingness to fight instinct. Because the brain still believes salt is survival. It doesn't know the shelves are stocked, that the oceans are full, that food is engineered to addict. Your biology thinks it's saving your life. But in today's world, it might be doing the opposite. We've inherited the wisdom of ancestors who walked barefoot for miles just to taste the mineral edge of survival. Now, we must inherit a new wisdom, the strength to say enough. Salt isn't the enemy, but our blind craving for it is. And if we want to live longer, breathe easier, and keep our hearts beating cleanly into old age, we must break the chain that evolution never thought to lock, because the thirst for salt once saved us. But today, it could be what slowly kills us. Startle reflex, never left. You're walking down a hallway, lost in thought, when suddenly, someone steps out from a doorway. You flinch, your body jumps, muscles contract, breath catches, your heart surges like it's trying to leap out of your chest. And for a second, you're not in that hallway anymore. You're in the grasslands, or the forest, or a shadowed cave mouth, a place where something fast meant something deadly. That reflex? It's not embarrassment. It's not irrational. It's your body remembering a world that no longer exists, but might at any moment. The startle reflex is one of the oldest defense systems in the human brain. It's not learned, it's built in. Babies exhibit it within days of birth. Loud noise, sudden motion. They throw out their arms, curl their legs, brace as if the world itself might collapse. And they're right to, because for our ancestors, hesitation meant death. That rustle in the grass could be a gust of wind, or a predator mid-leap. And those who jumped first, who reacted fastest, lived long enough to become our grandparents. Their instincts, honed over 100,000 generations, are still alive in your spine. The reflex doesn't wait for logic. It bypasses thought. That's the point. It shoots through the amygdala, the brain's fear hub, sending electrical signals straight into the muscles. Eyes widen. Head ducks. Limbs contract or flail. It's why people scream before understanding why. Why you can't help the jolt when lightning flashes or when something scurries past your feet in the dark. You're not thinking scared. You're being scared, automatically, biologically. And it's not just animals or darkness. The startle reflex is tuned to motion, especially motion coming toward you. Our visual system is wired to prioritize rapidly expanding objects, because that's what a charging threat looks like. A bear, a boulder, an enemy's fist. Even in modern life, this reflex fires constantly. Ever flinched during a video game? Or ducked when someone tossed you something unexpectedly? That's the same ancestral system, still calibrated for survival, still ready to save your life even if your rational mind is lagging behind. This reflex has real physical depth. Muscles in your neck tighten to protect the spinal cord, shoulders hunch to shield vital organs, hands often move toward the face, an instinctual guard. And your entire nervous system floods with adrenaline, preparing for fight or flight. What you feel as just a jump is actually a full-body shield deploying in milliseconds. But here's where it gets stranger. Some people have stronger startle responses than others, and that's not weakness, it's sensitivity. A more reactive nervous system may mean greater survival ability in high-risk environments. Soldiers, trauma survivors, or those who've lived in dangerous conditions often develop heightened reflexes. Their systems learn to react faster, to treat every sound or shadow as a possible threat. It's not paranoia. It's a brain doing its job too well. And yet, the startle reflex also plays a role in emotional memory. Events that trigger it become seared into the brain. That's why people remember the exact moment they heard bad news or experienced sudden fear. The jolt doesn't just activate the body, it stamps the moment into consciousness. Because survival isn't just reacting to danger, it's remembering how it felt. This reflex even invades our culture. Horror films weaponize it. Jump scares are artificial predators. Filmmakers know they don't need gore or monsters, just timing. A creak, a shadow, a sudden flash, and your body betrays you. Flinches, gasps, braces. You know it's a movie, but your nervous system doesn't care. It responds like it always has, with survival. That's the haunting beauty of it. In a world of doors and deadlines, we still carry the jungle in our nerves. You might sit in a quiet office, drink coffee, send emails, but inside, you as a system still looking for saber-tooths, still bracing for the crack of a branch, still mapping exits, still reading motion in the corner of your eye. The modern world evolved too fast for the brain to catch up. You adapted, sure, but your reflexes, they stayed behind, crouched in the tall grass, waiting. And maybe that's good. Maybe it's right that something ancient still watches over us, because safety isn't guaranteed. Civilization is a thin veil. The startle reflex is a backup plan. Older than fire, older than words. It's your first alarm system, your built-in guardian. So the next time you jump at a noise, flinch at motion, or feel that pulse of fear you can't quite explain, don't laugh it off. Don't dismiss it. That reflex was earned. Through bloodlines. Through nightmares. Through narrow escapes in the dark. It has kept humans alive for longer than civilization has existed. It's not fear. It's memory. It's survival. It's the echo of a world that once demanded vigilance at every step. And your body never forgot. Vision built for firelight. Our vision was forged in darkness. Soft, primal, flickering darkness. Not the sterile blaze of LEDs. Not the cold glare of blue screens or fluorescent tubes. No. Our eyes evolved for firelight. For the glow of embers dancing in caves. For shadows whispering just beyond reach. For twilight and moonlight and the faint shimmer of distant stars. What we see today, what we endure, is not what we were built for. Step back tens of thousands of years. The only light after sunset was fire, a fragile flame carved from wood and spark. It didn't flood the world, it hinted. It created contrast, depth, mystery, and our eyes adjusted accordingly. They learned to see detail in dimness, to track movement in peripheral flickers, to differentiate shape and danger through gradients of shadow. We didn't just see in the dark, we belonged to it. The human eye is a masterpiece of adaptation, but it's a masterpiece for a world that no longer exists. The rods in our retinas, more sensitive to low light, dominate in twilight. They allow us to detect motion and forms in the dark. Our peripheral vision is wired to see threat approaching from the edge. Our pupils respond like ancient shutters, widening in night's embrace, narrowing only to guard against the rare midday sun. But now, we wake to phones. We stare into tablets, computers, TVs. Artificial light isn't just everywhere, it's invasive. LED light, especially the high-frequency blue wavelengths, tells our brain that it's midday. Even at midnight, it suppresses melatonin. It delays sleep. It overstimulates the very system meant to rest with the rising moon. We are flooding a prehistoric organ with unnatural brilliance. This is why your eyes burn after a day indoors, why your sleep falters, why your dreams feel shallow and interrupted. Your ancestors didn't scroll, they stared into flickering flames. They watched faces glow and vanish in rhythm with fire's breath. And it did more than illuminate, it soothed. Firelight syncs with the eye's preference for warm tones and low contrast. It relaxes. It mimics sunset, signaling the body to slow down, breathe, restore. Even in studies today, people who spend evenings in firelight or firelight simulations show lower cortisol levels, deeper sleep, calmer heart rates. It's as if the body remembers, as if it yearns to return to that ancient rhythm. And consider this. The modern world doesn't just blind, it overwhelms. The retina was never designed to process this much constant motion. Blinking ads, scrolling text, rapid-fire cuts and videos. Our ancestors stared for hours at slow flames and still horizons. Now we process more visual data in one day than they did in a month. That's not stimulation, that's assault. So our vision strains, headaches bloom, screen fatigue sets in. We try to adapt, but we are pushing against the limits of a design that worked flawlessly in a world lit by stars. This is why candlelight feels calming, why fireplaces draw us in, why we stare at campfires without needing a reason. Fire is the oldest television, and our eyes still long for its glow. We think we've upgraded, brighter lights, clearer images, sharper screens, but brightness is not beauty. Clarity is not comfort. Our vision was never meant for 24-hour illumination. It was meant to rise with the sun, rest with the moon, and flicker with the fire. The next time your eyes ache, when the screen glares too sharp, when the night feels too bright, remember that inside your skull lives an ancient observer, one that saw by embers, not bulbs, one that finds peace not in pixels, but in shadow. And that vision, though strained, still sees the truth. We lit the world with fire, and fire lit something inside us in return. Viruses. Write our DNA, headings and bold letters. You are not fully human. Not entirely. Inside you, woven into the code of your body, is something older than your name, older than your species. Something viral. It doesn't infect you anymore. It is you. Around 8% of your DNA comes from viruses, not recent invaders, ancient ones. Ghosts of pandemics past, infections so deep, so persistent, that they stitched themselves into your genome and never left. You are walking with the memory of battles that ended millions of years ago. But the battlefield is still inside you, because viruses don't always destroy. Sometimes they stay. And sometimes they rewrite the rules of life. It begins with retroviruses, tiny invaders that don't just attack your cells, but slip inside them, hijack their machinery, and copy themselves directly into your DNA. Most of the time, these infections vanish or kill. But once in a rare while, a retrovirus infects a sperm or egg cell. And if that cell creates life, then so does the virus, a permanent passenger, an uninvited architect. These are called endogenous retroviruses, and they are part of you now. Passed down not through exposure, but inheritance. Generation after generation, written into the blueprint of your existence. Some sit dormant, like fossils trapped in code. Others have mutated beyond recognition. But some still whisper. Take HERV-W, a viral gene that once came from a plague, now crucial to human pregnancy. Its protein, syncytin, helps form the placenta. Without it, mammals might not even exist. A virus didn't just infect us, it helped us become who we are. Without it, you wouldn't have been born. Let that sink in. What once tried to kill us is now required to create us. This isn't science fiction. This is molecular archaeology. Your genome is a palimpsest, layered with edits, traces, invasions, and much of that rewriting wasn't done by evolution alone. It was done by viral code, replicating again and again, sometimes dying out, sometimes altering the fate of entire species. This isn't rare, it's common, it's part of the system. Like an ancient writer, the virus scrawled its own words into our DNA and handed the script down the bloodline. And that script? It's still active. Not all viral DNA is silent. Under stress, radiation, illness, chemical exposure, some of these sequences can wake up, reactivate, trigger immune responses. In some cases, contribute to diseases like multiple sclerosis or certain cancers. Imagine, something your ancestor caught in prehistory may still be waiting, sleeping inside you, half dead and half alive. A viral ghost curled in your chromosomes. But it's not just horror, it's complexity. Because not all viral DNA harms. Some protect. Some help regulate our immune systems, control other invading viruses, or influence brain function. Our thoughts, our memories, even our behaviors, these too may bear the fingerprints of ancient infections. We are not purely biological. We are symbiotic, merged. And it raises a disturbing question. How much of you is you? When you speak, when you move, when you love, when you dream? Are you doing so entirely as a human, or are echoes of ancient viral commands whispering beneath your consciousness? You carry the code. You pass it on. You live in a body that is not a fortress, but a mosaic. A history book written by battles long forgotten, and viruses worthy editors. Modern science is only beginning to grasp the depth of this reality. The Human Genome Project didn't just map human genes, It discovered entire regions of DNA with no clear human origin, repeats, insertions, signatures of retroviral tampering. At first, they were dismissed as junk DNA. But the more we study it, the more we realize it's not junk. It's a journal. One that began before humans even stood upright. Even now, viruses continue to write in us. COVID-19, HIV, HPV, each one shaping bodies, changing cells, pressuring evolution. Some may leave behind marks that future generations inherit. Perhaps one day, long after these plagues are gone, humanity will carry another 1% of viral DNA. And just like Sinkitan, maybe something meant to harm will help create. We are not separate from viruses. We never were. We are the outcome of an uneasy truce, a complex alliance forged in infection, sealed in heredity. We feared viruses for their destruction, but underestimated their influence. We thought they were invaders. In truth, they were engineers. So the next time you think of your identity, remember this. You are not a single author. You are a collaboration. A manuscript drafted in bone and blood, but annotated by 1,000,000 years of viral edits. And some of those edits are still running. Addiction was once survival. Addiction isn't a modern problem. It's an ancient design, repurposed, overclocked, and tragically outdated. The brain's reward system didn't evolve for casinos, social media, fast food, or nicotine. It evolved for survival. It pushed our ancestors toward what they needed: calories, safety, belonging, pleasure, and it rewarded them for finding it with dopamine. A spark of joy that said, "This is good, do it again." But what happens when that system, once tuned for scarcity, is dropped into a world of endless abundance? You get addiction. The human brain wasn't designed to say no to sugar. In fact, it was designed to crave it. Sweetness meant ripe fruit. Energy, survival. Fat was even more powerful. Dense calories, a sign of rare, rich nutrition. Salt, vital for nerve function and hydration. Our brains were programmed to treat these substances like treasure. But now, those treasures are everywhere. Artificial, engineered, refined, and our reward circuits are still operating on ancient instincts. The result? We binge. We spiral. We return again and again. Not because we're weak, but because we're wired to survive a world that no longer exists. Dopamine was never meant to flood the brain endlessly. It was supposed to arrive in small bursts, after climbing a tree, making fire, finding shelter, being embraced. But modern stimuli hijack that signal. Junk food gives a dopamine spike with no effort. Social media mimics social approval. Drugs force open the reward gate with chemical crowbars, and the brain adapts. That's what makes it dangerous. The more dopamine you chase, the less satisfying it becomes. Receptors downregulate, pleasure fades, but craving remains. So you go back for more. You need more sugar, more likes, more alcohol, more hits, just to feel normal. This is the cycle of addiction, and it's not just about substances. The same circuits drive our need for validation, for belonging, for attention. We scroll endlessly, refreshing feeds, chasing comments, fearing disconnection. Because loneliness, too, was once a death sentence. Being cast out meant danger. Our ancestors didn't just crave food, they craved each other. That's why shame doesn't help. Addiction isn't a failure of willpower. It's an evolutionary echo. It's a system built to protect us, but overloaded by a world we never evolved for. But here's the truth. What was once survival can be unlearned, slowly, with compassion, with awareness. Recovery isn't about erasing the system, it's about learning to use it wisely, finding new rewards, rebuilding sensitivity, reclaiming joy from hijackers. Because your brain is not broken. It's doing exactly what it was designed to do. The challenge is, so is everything around you. Addiction is not weakness, it's a mismatch. A powerful survival machine trapped in a world of synthetic temptation. And to fight it, we need to understand it, not punish it. Because addiction was once survival. But now, survival means learning when to stop. Consider this. In the wild, finding food required hours of effort. Foraging, hunting, failing, trying again. And when success came, it was rare and hard-earned. The dopamine reward was meant to reinforce behavior that directly improves survival. But now, you can press a button and have 3,000 calories delivered in 30 minutes. No hunt, no effort. Just the same dopamine hit, and more. This is what scientists call a mismatch environment. Our bodies and brains evolved for one world, but we now live in another. The reward system is still calibrated for scarcity. The world gives us excess, and in that gap, addiction thrives. Even love, something so essential to our social survival, is vulnerable. Romantic highs, physical intimacy, emotional connection, they all trigger the same reward circuits. But now, dating apps offer endless novelty. Swiping becomes addictive. People become consumable. Emotional validation turns transactional. And real connection, once rare and meaningful, begins to lose its spark. Shopping, gaming, pornography, gambling, all designed not just to entertain, but to trap. They mimic ancient rewards and deliver them faster, more intensely, and more frequently than nature ever intended. And like sugar in the bloodstream, they flood the mind until it forgets how to feel joy without them. What's worse, the more we indulge, the more numb we become. This is not just theory, it's observable in brain scans. Dopamine receptors in addicted brains shrink. The capacity for pleasure decreases. The world becomes gray. And the only color left is the thing that caused the addiction. It's not just about weakness, it's about chemistry, about time, about systems evolved for danger, not convenience. The fight-or-flight reflex, meant to protect us from predators, now activates during emails. The need to connect, meant to ensure tribal survival, now drives panic when your phone is left at home. Our brains were never meant to deal with this, and yet, there is hope. Because awareness is the first rebellion. Once we see the pattern, once we understand that addiction is a side effect of genius, we can start to unwind it. We can train the brain to find reward in balance, in rest, in silence, in slow things. Things that don't flood us, but fulfill us. Exercise can rebuild dopamine sensitivity. Meditation can quiet the panic. Therapy can rewire shame into understanding. Community, real, slow, compassionate community, can replace the cheap highs of endless likes. Recovery is not about going back to who we were. It's about evolving forward. Designing a new environment where ancient instincts don't have to be enemies. Because addiction was never a flaw, it was a survival feature. But now, to truly survive, we must learn to rise above it. Self-awareness is a burden. You are aware that you are alive, that you have a name, a past, and a story that no one else fully knows. That simple fact, your self-awareness, is both the crown jewel of evolution and its heaviest curse. You know you exist. You know you will die. And everything in between is a cascade of questions nature never meant for you to ask. Self-awareness wasn't planned. It wasn't some inevitable endpoint of brain development. It was an accident, a glitch that turned out to be useful. Somewhere along the timeline, early hominids began to recognize their reflection, not just as another animal, but as themselves. That spark, the ability to say "I am," set fire to everything. It brought imagination, guilt, memory, foresight, love, despair. It gave us language, art, philosophy, and nightmares. Because once the mind becomes aware of itself, it can't unsee the truth. It is small, it is temporary, and it is trapped inside a skull trying to understand a universe that doesn't speak back. Evolution shaped creatures to survive, to eat, reproduce, avoid pain. It never meant for us to contemplate meaning. It never meant for us to wonder what happens after death, to look at the stars and feel loneliness, to stare into the mirror and ask, "Is this really me?" But we do, and so we suffer. Other animals feel pain, sure, but they do not ponder it. They do not grieve their own existence. They do not write poems about their fear of disappearing. Humans, on the other hand, drown in this endless spiral of thought. Every decision becomes a reflection of identity. Every moment is analyzed, compared, judged. We turn memories into weapons. We imagine futures that never arrive. We play scenes in our heads over and over, asking, "What if?" as if we could rewrite reality. This burden is invisible but enormous. Depression, anxiety, existential dread, these are not malfunctions. They are side effects, the price of being aware. When you realize you are not just a body, but a person, the weight changes. You become accountable to yourself. You begin to question your purpose, your authenticity, your value. And worst of all, you know that someday, all of this awareness will end. That realization is so overwhelming that most of us run from it. We drown it in distraction, in screens, in noise, in routine. We fill our lives with rituals not because they mean something, but because they quiet the roar of the unanswered. We build myths, write books, hold hands, because in the face of our own consciousness, we are terrified to be alone. The philosopher Thomas Nagel once said, "If there is no reason why anything exists, then it is absurd that we exist." That's the kind of thought no ant will ever have. No dolphin, no crow, no wolf. But you will, because you can. And yet, this burden is also a strange kind of gift, because to be self-aware is to be capable of wonder, of awe, of gratitude, of beauty that serves no function, no survival value. You can cry from music, laugh from memory, dream up entire universes in your mind. You can fall in love with an idea, feel nostalgia for something that never happened. You can say, "I miss who I used to be," and mean it. That's not instinct. That's not evolution. That's you. But the gift and the curse are one and the same. The light of self-awareness casts long shadows. You can't have meaning without also facing meaninglessness. You can't seek truth without also finding pain. And sometimes, when it's quiet, when you're alone, you feel that sharp edge of awareness cut through everything. Why am I here? What am I supposed to be? Will any of this matter? Nature never meant for you to ask those questions, but you do, because you're human. Because a few strands of DNA turned left instead of right. Because a brain got too good at modeling the world and turned that model inward. You are a creature staring back at itself, and that reflection is terrifying. But it is also the most profound thing in the known universe. So if you're overwhelmed by your own thoughts, if you sometimes wish you could turn it all off, know this: you're not broken. You are just aware, and that is the rarest burden of all. Stillness, sparks, ancient dread. Stillness is not peace. Stillness is tension. It's the moment just before something breaks, the air thick with something unsaid, unseen, but not unfelt. And deep in our bones, we know this. We feel it. Because for most of human history, stillness wasn't safety. Stillness was a sign, a warning, a signal that something out there, something with teeth, was moving without sound. Imagine the forest. Birds chirp, insects buzz, leaves rustle with the wind. Noise is normal, life is noisy, but then suddenly, it all stops. A hush falls. And that silence? That is when the ancestors froze, not from calm, but from terror. Because when prey goes silent, it's because a predator is near. That's how the mind was shaped. Stillness wasn't peace. It was the drumbeat of death coming close. That programming is still alive in us. It hasn't faded. It's why we feel unsettled in a quiet room. Why long silences during conversations twist into discomfort. Why walking into a house where everything is still makes the hair on your arms rise. Your body is alert, not out of paranoia, but because it's doing exactly what it evolved to do. Watch the stillness for signs of danger. Even today, sudden silence triggers the amygdala, the fear center of the brain. It releases cortisol. Your pupils dilate, your breath shortens, your muscles tense, and you don't even know why. You just feel it. Something isn't right. You check behind you. You check the windows. But there's nothing. Or at least, nothing you can see. But your biology doesn't care about sight. It cares about survival. This is why we fill silence with sound. We hum. We talk. We turn on music. Even in empty rooms. Because silence breeds anxiety. Stillness feels like waiting for something to go wrong. Even our sleep is affected. In absolute silence, people wake more easily, feel more restless, more vulnerable. Our minds want background noise, rain, wind, a heartbeat-like rhythm, to reassure us that life is still moving, that we're not alone, that something isn't about to strike. Think about the most unsettling horror scenes. They don't begin with screams. They begin with silence, a hallway too quiet, a forest where the wind has stopped, a radio gone static. Filmmakers know what evolution already wrote into our blood. Silence is tension. Stillness is dread. The fear is not irrational. It is ancient. Even socially, we fear stillness. A long pause in a conversation. Suddenly you feel exposed, vulnerable, eyes shift, throats clear. Someone forces a laugh or a comment just to break it. Why? Because silence reveals. It peels away the mask. It makes us confront what's beneath the noise, the thoughts we suppress, the doubts we hide, the fear that maybe, just maybe, something is wrong. In therapy sessions, trained silence can make people cry. Not because they're hurt, but because stillness opens a door that words kept closed. We talk to stay afloat. We fill the air to avoid the weight of what waits in silence. This is also why meditation is so hard. Why mindfulness, though healing, begins with discomfort. Because to sit in stillness is to go against every instinct we inherited. It's to silence the ancient alarm bells and tell your nervous system, there is no predator, you are safe. But convincing evolution? That takes time. Stillness sparks ancient dread because it once saved our lives. A moment of quiet could have meant a predator crouching in the dark. Our ancestors didn't run because they saw something. They ran because the world went silent. And sometimes, that silence was the only warning they got. So the next time you feel that creeping discomfort in a silent room, don't dismiss it. Don't shame it. Understand it. It's not a flaw. It's a fossil. A psychological relic of survival. A whisper from the past saying, stay sharp. Something once waited for you in the stillness. But now, the predator is gone, and all that remains is the echo. Stillness isn't always safety, but sometimes it's not threat either. Sometimes it's just the past reminding you that once upon a time, silence meant everything. Stress was once useful. Stress was once a gift, a brutal, razor-edged gift designed to save your life. When a predator emerged from the trees or when danger crept through the tall grass, your ancestors didn't need calm. They needed cortisol. They needed their heart rate to surge, their muscles to tense, their vision to narrow. The stress response was evolution's emergency switch. It diverted blood from digestion to limbs, slowed down long-term thinking, and prepared the body to run or fight. And it worked. Those who froze too long didn't survive long enough to reproduce. You are descended from the jumpy ones, the hyper-aware, the anxious, the ones whose stress response was faster, stronger, more persistent. They lived, and in their survival, they passed it on, to you. But the world changed, the threats changed, and our bodies didn't. Now, the lion isn't in the bushes, it's in your inbox, it's in your debt, your deadlines, your phone's notification buzz at midnight. Cortisol still surges, not because you're in physical danger, but because your brain thinks you are. Because the same systems designed to keep you alive from real predators can't tell the difference between a bear and a performance review. And there's the tragedy. Cortisol, the chemical meant to save you, now silently poisons you. In the wild, a stress spike was temporary. It lasted minutes, hours at most. Then the danger passed, the body reset, the cortisol dropped. But today, stress never ends. It simmers. It loops. We live in a society of constant low-level panic. Alarms everywhere, traffic, noise, bills, guilt, fear of missing out. The danger never passes. So, the body never turns off the alarm. And that's not what we were built for. Chronic stress corrodes us from the inside. Cortisol, once a life-saving hormone, becomes a slow killer. It raises blood pressure, weakens immunity, disrupts sleep, shrinks memory centers in the brain. It damages the heart, literally. Your body, in trying to survive imagined threats, begins to destroy itself. Studies now show a direct link between chronic stress and heart disease, anxiety disorders, depression, weight gain, even premature aging. The very systems meant to preserve life begin to shorten it. Because the machinery is ancient and the environment is new, we have no built-in off switch. We have an evolved one, and culture alone can't compensate. Think of the stress response like a fire alarm, meant to alert you when the house is burning. But what happens when it blares every day, every hour, for no real fire? You stop sleeping. You stop thinking clearly. You break down. Your body too wears out under the weight of false alarms. But here's the deeper pain. Our society rewards it. It praises stress as productivity. We admire those who never rest, who grind through anxiety, who wear exhaustion like a badge. We don't soothe the alarm. We amplify it. We pump caffeine into tired veins. We scroll endlessly through headlines of catastrophe. We equate busyness with worth. And all the while, the body keeps bleeding cortisol. Ancient humans ran from danger, fought, or died. Then it ended. But now, there is no end. You can't outrun stress when it comes from inside your skull. When your brain replays arguments, imagines failures, loops regrets, and forecasts disaster like a broken weather system. And so, we suffer. Not because stress is unnatural, but because it wasn't meant to be permanent. Your stress response is a brilliant tool, used wrong. It's like driving a car in first gear forever. The engine screams, the parts wear down, the fuel burns too fast. And yet, you keep your foot on the pedal. Not because you want to, but because no one taught you how to stop. But there are ways to interrupt it, to send new signals. Deep breathing, meditation, laughter, movement. These aren't cliches. They're biological overrides. Tools to tell the brain, the threat has passed. You are safe now. Because if you don't interrupt it, your body won't do it on its own. The system isn't broken, it's outdated. And perhaps the cruelest irony? The stress response that evolved to keep us alive may now be the very thing that kills us early. Our brains are too fast. Our lives are too loud. The mismatch is fatal. We live in a world our bodies were never designed to survive. Not physically, but emotionally, mentally, biochemically. But knowing that is the first step. You're not weak for feeling overwhelmed. You're human. You're wired this way. And your pain isn't failure. It's an ancient code running in a modern machine. Stress was once useful, but it no longer fits the world we've built. And until we learn how to shut it off, until we evolve the silence, we'll keep mistaking noise for danger, and keep paying the price for alarms we can't unhear. Teeth too big for mouths, in the corners of your mouth, buried under gum and bone, lie remnants of an ancient survival system. Wisdom teeth. Once essential, now mostly useless, and sometimes deadly. Millions of people undergo surgery every year to remove them. They cause infections, shift teeth, damage nerves, and sometimes, left untreated, they kill. But why are they there at all? The answer lies in evolution's messiness. Wisdom teeth are third molars. For our ancestors who ate tough plants, raw meat, and had no dental care, these extra grinders were vital. Early humans wore their teeth down fast. By the time a person reached adulthood, their first and second molars were often worn flat or lost entirely. So, around age 17 to 25, wisdom teeth would erupt, nature's backup plan. But today, everything has changed. Our food is softer. We cook, we process, we cut, we blend. Our jaws no longer need to be wide and powerful. As a result, modern humans are evolving smaller jaws, but the genetic blueprint for wisdom teeth hasn't caught up. So, we end up with mouths too small for the teeth we still grow. This mismatch causes pain, misalignment, crowding, and impaction. When a tooth gets stuck and never fully emerges, impacted wisdom teeth can lead to cysts, bone damage, and infections that travel through the bloodstream. In rare cases, they've even been fatal. It's not the teeth themselves, but what happens when evolution forgets to tidy up? Because evolution doesn't delete. It adds. It layers. It improvises. It's a chaotic process of stacking traits that worked once, but may no longer work now. And unless a trait actively harms reproduction, evolution lets it stay. That's why we have tailbones, appendix, goosebumps, and wisdom teeth. And wisdom teeth are the perfect example of this evolutionary lag. They no longer serve a purpose, but they're still there, waiting, erupting, getting infected, sometimes harmless, often problematic. Orthodontists now routinely remove them, especially in the West. But not everyone grows wisdom teeth. Some are born with only one, others with none. In fact, evolutionary pressure is starting to reduce the number of people who grow them at all. In a few thousand years, they may disappear entirely. But for now, they remain. Silent, dormant, dangerous. They're proof that evolution is not perfect. It's practical. If something works well enough to survive and reproduce, it stays, even if, centuries later, it causes more harm than good. That's why the human body is a patchwork of old ideas. It's not intelligently designed. It's a messy, reactive system that got us this far. And in the back of your mouth, your wisdom teeth whisper a simple truth. Evolution never cleans up. It just moves on. To understand the chaos of wisdom teeth, look no further than fossil skulls. Early hominids like Homo habilis and Australopithecus had larger jaws and broader dental arches. Their mouths were built for grinding roots and tearing meat without utensils or cooking. Their third molars fit easily and were heavily used. But over time, culture outpaced biology. Fire changed our food. Tools did the chewing. Our jaws began to shrink. Yet the genes for wisdom teeth didn't vanish. They still activated, like a forgotten feature of an outdated blueprint. Studies show that about 35% of people today are born without one or more wisdom teeth. In some populations, that number is higher, suggesting evolutionary adaptation. But it's slow, painfully slow. And in the meantime, oral surgeons stay busy. When wisdom teeth grow crooked or sideways, they press against the roots of nearby molars. This can cause shifting, crowding, and even breakage. The resulting inflammation isn't just local. Bacteria from an infected gum pocket can enter the bloodstream, increasing the risk of heart infections, brain abscesses, or even sepsis. And yet, the body doesn't know it's out of date. That's the strange thing about evolution. It doesn't rewind. It can't go back and erase obsolete traits. It can only move forward with what it has. Wisdom teeth survive not because they're useful, but because they're not destructive enough to be selected out quickly. And so, modern dentistry must do what nature hasn't. Extraction is often seen as a rite of passage. Teenagers scheduled for wisdom teeth removal get ice packs and milkshakes. It's normalized, expected, even joked about. But it's also major surgery, with risks of nerve damage, dry socket, and rare complications that echo the deeper truth. We are carrying our evolutionary past inside our skulls, and sometimes it erupts painfully into the present. The mouth, in this way, is a museum. Each tooth tells a story of diet, of climate, of culture. And the wisdom tooth? It's a fossil that still erupts. One day, future generations may no longer grow them. Maybe CRISPR and genetic selection will phase them out. Maybe evolution will finally delete what it forgot to clean up. But until then, our too small jaws will keep colliding with our too big past. And so, once again, we return to the same lesson. The human body isn't perfectly designed. It's just what worked at the time. And sometimes, that means pain. Especially when your skeleton still thinks you live in the Stone Age. Especially when your jaw runs out of room. But your DNA doesn't. That's the cost of evolution's memory. It never forgets, even when it should. Thumbs made us obsessed. Your thumbs are more than just body parts. They're evolutionary revolutions. These short, sturdy digits transformed us from wanderers into builders, from prey into predators, from watchers into makers. The opposable thumb is what gave us fire, weapons, machines, instruments, language written in stone and ink and code. It gave us the world, but it also gave us the need to touch it, constantly. Think about your day. How often is your thumb in motion? Scrolling, clicking, gripping, tapping, texting. The moment you wake, you reach for your phone. You unlock it with a thumbprint. You hold your toothbrush, your coffee cup, your car keys, your pen, your remote. Your entire interface with modern life funnels through your thumbs. Those two curved sentinels at the base of human progress. They were once used to make spears, shape tools, spark fire. Now, they refresh apps, swipe left, open tabs, double tap. Evolution didn't design this behavior, but it designed the capacity. And now, we can't stop. The opposable thumb is a physical trait, but what it unleashed was psychological. It gave us control. Fine motor skills gave birth to craftsmanship, detail, precision. And with precision came a taste for perfection, control, order, ownership. Our thumbs let us change the world, and so we became obsessed with doing so. Fidgeting isn't meaningless, it's ancestral. When we tap, twist, click, spin, what we're doing is engaging the loop, the neurological link between intention and action, between thought and object. Our thumbs are the physical anchor of our anxiety, our boredom, our drive to manipulate our environment even when there's nothing left to fix. When you click a pen mindlessly, you're not broken. You're responding to the built-in need to move, to touch, to do something with those thumbs. Always. Now, think about screens. Smartphones are designed to be used with thumbs. Your entire digital reality is built around the flick of a thumb across glass. It's no accident. Devices are addictive in part because they are tactile, thumb-activated. You don't just consume, you participate, you control. That loop feeds dopamine. Your brain rewards the simple act of touch, Because for hundreds of thousands of years, that touch meant survival. Making fire, grasping a weapon, opening a shell, feeding a child. The thumb was purpose. Now, it's a portal. But that portal is always open, and we've never been more addicted to the sensation of control. We check our phones hundreds of times a day. Not because something new awaits, but because the thumb wants something to do. That little movement promises a microdose of certainty, of feedback, of relevance. Your thumb moves faster than your thoughts. It chases purpose on instinct, and it doesn't stop when you put the phone down. Fidget cubes, spinners, stress balls, even prayer beads. These are tools made to satisfy the restless digit that once shaped empires, the compulsive need to touch, twist, reset. These are echoes, not flaws. Echoes of a brain that evolved to never sit still, and a thumb that evolved to never rest. There's beauty in it, too. Your thumbs made music possible, architecture, surgery, calligraphy. The same thumbs that scroll TikTok were once used to carve gods into cave walls, to tie knots that saved lives, to flip the pages of books that changed the world. We are, in many ways, thumb-born. Every tool we've ever made is an extension of that opposable joint, of our drive to mold the world into shapes we can hold. But the shadow of that gift is obsession. We are now overwhelmed by what we can touch. Every device, every interface, every notification is a thumb trigger. And our brains, caught in the feedback loop, mistake movement for meaning. We can't stop swiping not because we're weak, but because we are over-equipped, too enabled, trapped by the very design that once set us free. So next time your thumb hovers over a screen for no reason, or spins a ring on your finger, or twitches in your pocket waiting for something to hold, understand what it's asking for. Purpose, action, connection. It's not the thumb that's the problem. It's what we've given it to control. We gave it the world, and now it can't let go. Children born too early. A human child enters the world not as a finished being, but as a compromise, a truce between evolution and anatomy. Born too soon, too soft, too helpless. We arrive half-baked, incomplete, unable to walk, feed, or even hold up our own heads. Compared to nearly every other mammal, we are premature at birth. And this isn't failure, it's a trade, a brutal negotiation with nature. Why? Because of our brains. The human brain is massive, proportionally the largest in the animal kingdom. And it had to be. It gave us language, tools, art, memory, imagination. But it came at a cost. That expanding brain demanded a larger skull, and for most of human history, a larger skull meant danger. Because the human pelvis, especially in females, is a narrow bone-bound tunnel evolved for upright walking. It can only widen so much before locomotion becomes impossible. So, evolution made a deal. Deliver the baby early, before the brain gets too big. And so, we are born fragile. A foal can walk within hours. A giraffe calf can run by sundown. But a human? We lie flat, wailing, utterly dependent for years, not months, years. Evolution chose intelligence over independence. We traded strength for growth potential. Because a baby's brain doesn't stop developing at birth. It accelerates. The first few years of life are an explosion of neural activity. Synapses form at lightning speed. We learn to see, to speak, to recognize faces, emotions, meanings. The brain is still building itself, almost as if birth was only a checkpoint, not a conclusion. Scientists call it the fourth trimester, those first few months after birth, where a human infant, by all developmental standards, should still be in the womb. But it can't be, because if it were, it might not fit through the birth canal. The compromise is cruel, vulnerability in exchange for possibility, and this vulnerability has shaped everything. Our culture, our parenting, our psychology. Unlike other animals, we can't simply birth and move on. We must protect, nurture, carry, teach. We wrap our infants, rock them, whisper to them, not because we want to, but because we must. Because without it, they don't survive. Even our emotions are shaped by this fragility. The cries of a newborn are chemically impossible to ignore. They activate regions in our brain tied to urgency, empathy, and even panic. It's not manipulation. It's biology forcing care, because this tiny creature, so helpless, carries within it the architecture of the future. But the price we pay isn't just at birth. It lingers. Our brains are so complex, so plastic, that they remain vulnerable far into life. We suffer from mental illness, memory distortion, anxiety, trauma, and all consequences of a system that was built for flexibility, not stability. The same brain that can invent space travel can also spiral into depression. This is not coincidence. It's the toll of evolution's gamble. And the dependency doesn't just affect the infant, it reshapes the adult. Human childhood is the longest in the animal kingdom, and it forces us to form tribes, families, support systems. No one raises a child alone, because evolution ensured we can't. It's in our very DNA to band together, to make society, to build systems that compensate for the weakness of our beginning. We are, in a way, eternally premature. Our bodies take decades to mature. Our brains never stop adapting. Even as adults, we carry that early vulnerability forward. Fragile bodies, complex minds, the haunting echo of a birth that came too soon. And yet, it worked. That compromise birthed civilization. Fire, art, cities, language, philosophy. Everything you see around you began with that trade-off. Helplessness in the cradle for intelligence in the cosmos. We weren't ready when we were born, but that very unpreparedness allowed us to become more than animals. It allowed us to become human. So when you see a newborn, small, soft, wide-eyed, don't mistake it for weakness. See it for what it truly is, the most ambitious bet nature ever placed. A living question, a fragile spark, a brain that had to come early, just to become everything it was meant to be. Tools replaced natural strength. There was a time when survival meant muscle, when strength wasn't sculpted for vanity, but carved from necessity, when hands were calloused from shaping stone, and backs bowed from lifting, dragging, hunting. The early human body was forged in motion, climbing, digging, fighting, fleeing. Power wasn't optional. It was existence. But then, we made tools, and that changed everything. The first sharpened stone replaced the need for claws. A spear replaced the sprint. Fire softened food so teeth didn't have to tear. Every invention we created didn't just make tasks easier, it made us weaker. Slowly, subtly, the body began to offload effort. Muscles atrophied, bones thinned, jaws narrowed. We no longer had to be the weapon. We held one instead. At first, it was liberating. Tools extended our reach, amplified our force, gave us power far beyond our biology. A blade could pierce where fingers failed. A bow could strike from beyond danger. A wheel could carry what no man could lift. But that power came with a hidden cost. Physical resilience became negotiable. Fast forward thousands of years. Machines farm our food. Cars replace our legs. Elevators replace stairs. The strongest people today are often those who choose effort, not those who need it. Strength became a sport, an accessory, but not a survival trait. Not anymore. And the result? The modern human is, by ancient standards, physically fragile. Our bones break easier. Our posture collapses. Our grip strength, once a key to climbing, building, surviving, has declined in measurable generations. Even our feet, once spread for balance and speed, are narrowed by shoes that do the work for us. This isn't just about fitness, it's about evolution. The body adapts to what it's asked to do, and for centuries we've asked it to do less. Every new invention that eases burden also eases the need to endure, and the fewer hardships we face, the fewer strengths we retain. But the most alarming part isn't muscle, it's immunity. It's pain tolerance, it's recovery. The body was once a repair machine, hardened by cold, healed by rest, fueled by motion. Now, sedentary lives and artificial comforts have dulled our edges. We're more susceptible to inflammation, to chronic illness, to weakness not just of limb but of will. Because strength wasn't just physical, it was mental. It was built through resistance, through failure, through grit. And tools, while miraculous, remove that friction. They flattened the learning curve of life, and in doing so, they softened us. Imagine early humans watching us now, struggling with door hinges, complaining about cold from behind glass, aching from sitting too long, outsourcing even thought to algorithms. We built a world that runs smoother than ever before, and yet, our bodies are rusting in the background. This isn't a condemnation of progress. Tools change the world. They allowed for medicine, art, exploration. But it's a warning. Every time we offload effort, we risk losing the ability to endure, not just as individuals, but as a species. What happens when power goes out, when systems fail, when bodies built for comfort must suddenly survive? We are not helpless, but we are forgetful. Because deep within your muscles, yes, even now, is the blueprint of a survivor, a climber, a fighter, a builder. Your DNA remembers a time before tools. It remembers the call of effort, the pride of sweat, the calm after the storm of labor. Your body wants to be used. It was never designed to rest forever. We are living in a strange paradox. We've never had more tools, and we've never been more physically lost without them. Resilience isn't gone, it's buried. And like all things buried, it waits for challenge, for need, for a moment when no tool can save you. And in that moment, what rises will not be technology. It will be you. We rewired wolves too. They once stalked us in forests, eyes gleaming, teeth bared, born of wild instinct and cold hunger. Wolves, apex predators, masters of the untamed. And yet today, they sleep in our beds, lick our faces, wear sweaters in the winter. What happened? We didn't just tame wolves, we rewired them. The domestication of dogs is one of humanity's oldest and most radical experiments. Thousands of years ago, long before cities, before written language, before agriculture, humans formed a bond with an animal they once feared. But it wasn't just trust, it was transformation. Some wolves, bolder than others, lingered near human camps, scavenging scraps, learning our rhythms. The shy ones stayed away. The aggressive ones were driven off. But the ones in between, they stayed. They thrived. They evolved. Over generations, they became something else. Their brains changed, their hormones shifted, their behavior adapted. Not just to tolerate us, but to love us. And in return, we bred them. We encouraged the traits we liked: loyalty, gentleness, alertness, obedience. We selected for cuteness, friendliness, even eye contact. And soon, wolves became dogs. Not just genetically, but neurologically. Their brains developed specialized circuits to bond with humans. They release oxytocin, the same chemical that bonds mothers to infants when they gaze into our eyes. They became companions, partners, family. But that power to rewire didn't stop with love. It opened the door to manipulation. We bred dogs not just for companionship, but for labor, status, and aesthetics. Herding dogs, hunting dogs, guard dogs, lap dogs. We stretched their genes into unnatural shapes: flattened faces, stubby legs, hairless skin, oversized eyes. We invented entire breeds that could not survive without us, and some of that came at a cost. Bulldogs that can't breathe, dachshunds with spines too long for their bodies, Great Danes with hearts that fail young, pugs whose eyes pop from their sockets, all in the name of preference, of fashion. We rewired wolves into reflections of ourselves. Sometimes for the better, sometimes not. But this story isn't just about dogs, it's about us. Because domestication isn't just a biological process, it's a mirror. What we choose to tame reveals what we value. We wanted loyalty, so we bred it. We wanted control, so we enforced it. We wanted beauty, so we engineered it. At any cost. And in doing so, we proved something staggering. Humans don't just survive in nature, we reshape it. We altered the predator. And that means we can alter ourselves. Because the tools we use to turn wolves into dogs, selection, bonding, repetition, reinforcement, are the same tools we can use to reshape our own habits, fears, even instincts. We are not fixed creatures. Just as we rewired wolves, we are constantly rewiring our own brains through language, routine, attention, connection. Domestication is a two-way street, and it started quietly in the flickering firelight with a wolf who didn't run, and a human who didn't throw a stone. From that moment, evolution bent, it softened fur, shrunk snouts, swelled hearts, and carved a space between species where something new could grow. Not predator, not prey, but partner. And that may be the greatest thing we ever did, or the most dangerous. Because when you can tame a wolf, what else might you bend? And who decides where the line is? Scientists have traced domestication through both archaeology and DNA. Ancient dog remains show up near human campsites over 14,000 years ago, possibly earlier. Long before cattle or wheat, humans had dogs. They were our first biological allies, before farms, before gods. A partnership forged not out of technology, but instinct. And that instinct left a permanent imprint. Compared to wolves, dogs have smaller brains, but more tuned to social cues. Their ability to read human gestures, follow gazes, even respond to language is something no other animal has matched. Not even chimpanzees, our closest relatives. Dogs, through generations of selection, became expert human interpreters. But wolves never stopped being wolves. Even hand-raised, they revert. They don't follow eyes. They don't bond the same way. They remain wild. That's the line domestication draws, not just in genes, but in trust, and we keep drawing it. Across chickens, cows, pigs, across cats and camels. But dogs were first and deepest, and like any deep manipulation, it comes with shadow. The same selective pressure that made dogs gentle also made them dependent. Dogs with anxiety. Dogs that can't live without human touch. Breeds engineered to be so small they break bones jumping from a couch. Others so aggressive they require constant control. We didn't just change the wolf. We created something that can't survive without us. And that says something about us. Because in reshaping another species, we revealed our desires, our fears, our need to control life itself. Yet, beneath it all, there's something else. The shared gaze between dog and human still carries warmth, still activates ancient chemical pathways, a bond that crosses 30,000 generations and 2 species, a reminder that not all power is cruelty. Sometimes it's connection. Sometimes it's companionship so deep it rewrites evolution. But we must remember what we're holding. We hold something once wild, something that trusted us, and trust can be sacred or broken. So when you look into the eyes of a dog, remember, you're looking at a miracle of biology, history, and human influence. You're seeing a predator turned protector, a creature who rewrote its instincts to walk beside us. We rewired wolves, and in doing so, revealed the full power and full responsibility of being human. Cold still haunts us. You feel it the moment the temperature drops, not just in your skin, but in your bones. A tightness in the chest, a subtle panic in the breath, the sting of air that bites deeper than pain. This isn't just discomfort, it's memory. The cold is not neutral, it is a predator, and we were never meant to survive it. Humans evolved under warm suns. Our early ancestors thrived in the temperate plains of Africa. In climates where frost was foreign and shelter was shade, our skin, our circulation, our hairless bodies, all adapted for heat dissipation, not for heat retention. And when the ice ages came, when the world darkened and hardened, we didn't adapt. We improvised, we made fire, we stitched furs, we huddled in caves and carved out warmth where evolution failed to provide it. That's still true. Even now, in heated homes with layers of clothing and insulated walls, the cold undoes us faster than we like to admit. Hypothermia can begin when the body's core drops just a few degrees. Your own heat betrays you. Blood retreats from the limbs to preserve the vital organs. Fingers grow numb. Thoughts slow. Shivering begins, but eventually stops. That's the final stage, when the body gives up and warmth becomes hallucination. Many victims are found undressed, confused, having felt paradoxical heat as death approached. Frostbite is even crueler. It kills piece by piece. Cells crystallize. Capillaries collapse. Skin turns pale, then black. Pain gives way to numbness, which is worse, because it means you've stopped fighting. The cold doesn't conquer with force. It seduces. It convinces you to rest, to close your eyes, to stop trying. And all of this happens fast. Why? Because we were never meant to live in the cold. Unlike polar bears or Arctic wolves, we have no natural insulation. Our fat distribution isn't optimized for freezing temperatures. Our extremities, fingers, toes, ears, are practically invitations for frostbite. We are tropical creatures that wander too far, too fast. And what kept us alive wasn't biology, it was fear, memory, invention. The cold haunted us, so we learned to fear it before it killed us. That fear still lives in the body. Studies show that even a brief drop in skin temperature can trigger cortisol spikes. your stress hormone. Cold exposure mimics threat. It activates the sympathetic nervous system, the fight or flight mechanism. But there's no enemy to punch, just the quiet weight of winter, just silence and breath you can see. And while we've built machines to chase the cold away, heaters, coats, shelters, one mistake still brings it all crashing down. A lost glove, a power outage, a wrong turn on a mountain trail. The temperature doesn't care what century it is. Cold is old, older than us, and it's still undefeated. Look at the data. In some countries, winter kills more than summer. Not because people forget, it's because cold is efficient. It shuts the body down piece by piece, without drama. And it strikes hardest at the margins. The elderly, the poor, the isolated, those with the least warmth to spare. And then there's the psychological toll. Cold isn't just physical, it's emotional. Seasonal depression, lethargy, isolation, they spike in colder months, shorter days, longer nights. The brain responds to darkness and chill as danger. Not just outside, but inside. You move less, feel less, want less. Even your voice changes. Even your smile fades. The cold doesn't just kill, it empties. And yet, there is something almost sacred in the way we've resisted it. Fire was humanity's rebellion. Clothing, our protest. Architecture, our final line of defense. Every warm breath in the cold is a declaration. I'm still here, we're still here. But we didn't defeat the cold, we only outpaced it. And we must never forget that it waits, it lingers, it is patient. In mountains, in oceans, in the spaces between stars, in the failure of our machines, in the moment we stop moving. The cold is a reminder that we are fragile, that we were never built for this, that our warmth is not a birthright, it's a victory we must keep winning. And somewhere deep inside you, your body knows. That's why the wind cuts sharper than it should. That's why snow still feels like silence with teeth. That's why you flinch when frost touches your spine. The cold still haunts us, because it never stopped hunting us. Sweetness once meant safety. Sweetness was once a signal of life, a taste of survival. To our ancestors, sweetness meant fruit at its peak, calories without poison, energy without risk. It meant the plant had ripened fully, the sugars were safe to consume, and the danger of bitterness or toxin was gone. In a world of scarcity where hunger stalked every step, finding sweetness was like finding gold. Evolution took notice and etched that craving deep into our DNA. Our tongues are wired for sugar. Even newborns with no concept of flavor prefer sweet tastes. It's not learned, it's inherited. A built-in compass pointing us towards safety, nutrition, and energy. Sweetness once meant you could trust what you were about to eat. Bitter meant warning. Sour meant caution. Sweet meant life. But that ancient instinct was never meant for this world. Today, sweetness is everywhere. Not in berries plucked from a bush, but in brightly colored packaging, in processed syrups, in hidden corners of ingredient lists. The modern food landscape is flooded with artificial versions of the very thing we were designed to seek. Our craving hasn't changed, but what we consume has, and this is where the trap begins. We are living in an evolutionary mismatch. Our bodies still operate on Stone Age software, but our environments are all hyper-modern hardware. When your brain tastes sugar, it still celebrates like you're on the savannah. It rewards you with dopamine, a surge of pleasure, a burst of motivation to find more. That worked when sugar was rare, but now it becomes a loop, a hijack. A system meant to save us, turned against us. Industries know this. They engineer foods not just to be sweet, but to be super normal. Sweeter than nature ever intended. They bypass the natural brakes. A fruit has fiber. It fills you up. It tells your body, enough. But a soda, a candy bar, it skips those signals. It tricks the brain into thinking the reward isn't just available, it's unlimited. And so, we keep reaching, keep craving, keep consuming sweetness that no longer signals safety, but danger in disguise, obesity, diabetes, fatty liver, heart disease. These are not failures of will. They are the collateral damage of a biological system overwhelmed. We didn't evolve for restraint, we evolved for survival. And for most of history, survival meant never walking away from calories. But now, calories chase us. Even worse, Our sense of sweetness itself has been distorted. What once tasted rich and rare now seems bland. A strawberry can't compete with high fructose corn syrup. Our taste buds become desensitized. Our expectations climb. And natural foods, the ones our ancestors treasured, start to feel like disappointments. Not because they changed, but because we did. And the tragedy is deeper still. Because that craving for sweetness isn't just about food. It's emotional. It's comfort. It's celebration. Birthdays, holidays, grief, joy. Sweetness is how we mark it all. It's woven into our culture, our rituals, our memories. We use it to soothe children, to show love, to reward effort. But the sweetness we use now carries a hidden edge. We are the descendants of foragers. Our taste for sugar was never a flaw. It was a masterpiece of adaptation. But adaptation takes time, and time is the one thing evolution doesn't have when faced with shelves stocked with edible illusions. So, the next time you crave something sweet, understand the echo. That's not weakness. That's survival calling from deep inside you. That's a signal from a world long gone, where sweetness meant safety, not danger. Where to find something sugary was to find a future. We're not wrong to want it. We're just out of place in a world that exploits what was once sacred. And in knowing that, maybe we begin to take the power back. To reclaim sweetness not as a trap, but as a choice. Aging wasn't expected. Aging feels inevitable, like gravity, like time. But the truth is, evolution never planned for us to grow old. It only cared that we lived long enough to pass on our genes. Everything beyond that is an accident, a side effect, uncharted biological territory. And the consequences are written into every wrinkle, every ache, every forgotten name and unhealed wound. Aging wasn't designed. It was simply never designed against. Evolution is brutally efficient. It favors traits that increase reproductive success, traits that help us survive long enough to mate, raise offspring, and ensure they survive. If you died at 40 after raising your children, evolution did its job. Your genetic mission was complete. There was no incentive to invest in what happened after. So the machinery of your body was built to operate best when young, and then left to drift. That's why we peak early. In our 20s, we heal faster, think sharper, run quicker, bones are dense, muscles responsive, hormones optimized. But by the time we hit our 40s and beyond, things start to fray. Collagen breaks down. Metabolism slows. DNA repair mechanisms become less efficient. Cells begin to miscommunicate. It's not failure, it's neglect. Nature never expected us to still be here. Some scientists call this the evolutionary shadow. The dark zone beyond reproductive age where natural selection's influence fades. Think about it. If a genetic mutation only affects you after 60, it doesn't impact your ability to reproduce. So it's invisible to evolution. There's no pressure to eliminate it. That's why diseases like Alzheimer's or late-onset cancers persist in the gene pool. They strike after the mission is done. And yet, here we are, living far past the expiry date nature set for us. Modern medicine, nutrition, hygiene, they've extended our lives dramatically. In ancient times, reaching 50 was rare. Now it's expected. Some people live to 90, even 100. But biology hasn't caught up. We've added decades to our lifespans without rewriting the code meant to keep our bodies young. So we survive, but we degrade. Consider mitochondria, the powerhouses of your cells. With age, they falter. Their energy output declines. The free radicals they produce begin to overwhelm your body's defenses. Your tissues become less efficient, your brain less sharp. It's not just wear and tear, it's design limitations. The systems keeping you alive were never optimized for longevity. They were optimized for reproduction and then left on autopilot. There are exceptions, of course. Some theories suggest post-reproductive life has value, like the grandmother hypothesis, which proposes that older individuals help their descendants survive by offering wisdom, support, and caregiving. In human evolution, elders may have conferred survival advantages to grandchildren, indirectly enhancing the reproductive success of their lineage. But these roles are rare in nature. Most animals don't have menopause. They don't live long past reproduction. They die when nature says the job is done. That's what makes human aging so strange. We have outlived our evolutionary script. We're writing new chapters that biology never planned for. And with it comes new burdens: chronic pain, neurodegeneration, disease, isolation. Aging isn't just time passing, it's a collapse of regulation. 1,000 tiny systems slowly slipping out of sync. And yet, we resist. We create medicine to patch what fails. We study longevity. We explore gene editing, caloric restriction, and cellular reprogramming. We look to nature for clues. Why do certain jellyfish seem immortal? How do whales live for centuries? Can we steal these secrets and retrofit our own biology? But even in our defiance, there's a strange beauty in aging. It's proof of how far we've come, that we can even ask these questions, that we live long enough to witness our own decline and do something about it. We are a species that broke free from nature's clock and now wanders beyond its horizon. But we should never forget, aging wasn't expected. We are venturing into borrowed time. And what we do with it, how we face the cracks, the fading, the slow unraveling, will define the future of what it means to be human. Because if evolution abandoned us after 40, maybe it's time we evolve ourselves beyond it. Fairness is evolution's trick. We say life isn't fair, but deep down, we wish it were. Fairness feels like a natural law. We cheer when the hero wins, we rage when the villain escapes justice. Children shout, "That's not fair," before they understand what money is. But here's the unsettling truth. Fairness isn't a law of nature, it's a trick of evolution. A social illusion designed not to reflect truth, but to keep tribes from falling apart. Because in the raw world of survival, fairness doesn't matter. Strength does. Reproduction does. Genes don't care who deserves what. They care who passes them on. And yet, we feel injustice like a wound. Why? Because fairness wasn't designed to serve justice. It was designed to serve cohesion. In early human tribes, survival depended on cooperation. Hunting, gathering, defending territory, all required trust. And trust falls apart when people cheat, steal, or hoard. So evolution built a sense of fairness into us, a mental alarm system that lights up when someone takes more than their share. Brain scans show the same regions activate when people witness unfairness as when they experience physical pain. It hurts to see inequality, even when it doesn't affect us. That's not morality. That's biology. It explains why we reward generosity and punish freeloaders, why gossip exists, why we watch others for signs of betrayal. Our minds evolved to preserve the tribe, even if it means inventing the idea of justice to do it. But this instinct has limits, because fairness, as we experience it, is tribal. It's not about truth, it's about loyalty. We apply fairness most intensely to those in our group. Outsiders, strangers, historically, they were threats. Fairness didn't need to extend to them. In fact, evolution often favored cruelty to outsiders if it strengthened the group bond. This is why humans can care deeply about justice in one case and ignore it in another. We cheer for the underdog we identify with and shrug at the suffering of those we don't. It's not rational, it's not consistent, because it was never designed to be. Fairness was a social glue, not a cosmic law. And this explains one of the greatest tensions in human history. Our instincts tell us fairness matters, but the world doesn't follow that script. Natural disasters, diseases, accidents, they don't check if you deserve it. And when people exploit others and still rise to power, our sense of fairness breaks. We get angry, depressed, disillusioned, because we expect the world to care, and it doesn't. But that expectation, that hope, is part of what makes us human. It drives revolutions, reforms, resistance. The same trick of evolution that glued together ancient tribes now fuels protests and movements. We march not because the world is fair, but because we want it to be. We inherited fairness not as truth, but as a tool. And like all tools, we can learn to use it consciously. We can choose to extend it beyond our tribe, to the outsider, the stranger, even the rival. That's how justice evolves. Not as a reflection of nature, but as a rebellion against it. Fairness isn't real in the wild, but it can become real in us, if we choose to carry it forward. That's the paradox. Evolution gave us fairness, not because it's true, but because it works. And now, it's up to us to decide whether that trick becomes our greatest lie or our greatest legacy. To see this in action, look to the earliest human communities. Anthropologists studying hunter-gatherer tribes found a remarkable consistency. Food was shared. Meat from a hunt was divided. Tools were lent. Even successful foragers were expected to give back to the group. Those who hoarded were shunned or punished. This wasn't kindness, it was survival. If people felt they were treated unfairly, resentment grew. And resentment is a social poison. It leads to fracture, to silence, to violence. A tribe divided against itself starves. Fairness, then, was not an ideal. It was a pressure valve. It still is. Modern psychology shows just how deeply wired this sense of fairness is. In studies with capuchin monkeys, researchers gave one monkey a grape and another a cucumber. The grape is sweeter, more valuable. When the monkey getting the cucumber saw its partner get a grape for the same task, it lost control. It screamed, threw the cucumber back, pounded on the cage. That's not a human response. That's a brain recognizing inequality and rejecting it. Children do the same by age 3. Even if they benefit from unfairness, they're often uneasy. By age 6, they'll reject advantage entirely if it means a more equal outcome. We're wired not just to want fairness, but to crave balance, even at a cost. And yet, this craving also leads to conflict, because what feels fair isn't always what is fair, and fairness depends on perception. Two people can see the same situation. One calls it justice, the other oppression. That's not just politics. That's evolution's ambiguity. Fairness evolved as a fast tool, quick judgments, gut feelings, instant outrage. But the modern world is slow, complex, filled with data, systems, and consequences we can't always see. So, our fairness instinct fires, but it's misaligned. It's why people feel taxed unfairly, even if they're wealthier. Why arguments erupt over who got credit. Why we rage when a cheater wins, or celebrate when they're caught. Our brains weren't designed for objective justice. They were designed for social survival. But that doesn't make fairness meaningless. It makes it powerful. Because what began as a crude tribal tool can become a global ethic. It already has. Slavery was once fair to those in power. So was denying women the vote. So was letting children work in factories. But fairness evolved. Not genetically, but morally. We push the boundary of who counts, and that push continues. Every protest for equality, every fight for justice, every call for dignity, it all starts with that ancient spark. This isn't fair. It may have started as a trick, but now it's a choice. To believe that fairness should apply not just to our kin, but to all people. Not just to the strong, but to the vulnerable. Not just when it's easy, but especially when it's hard. Because if evolution gave us fairness as a tool, then using it consciously, wisely, might be the most human thing we do. The world will never be perfectly fair, but we can be, and that matters more than nature ever planned. You wake up drenched in sweat, heart racing, throat tight. You're safe. You know that. The room is quiet. No one's chasing you, no one's dying, but it doesn't feel safe, not yet, because your brain just dragged you through something it made up, and it felt real. That's the strange power of nightmares. We think of them as mistakes, as psychological noise, but the truth is more haunting. Nightmares are training. Bad dreams aren't random. They're simulations. Psychological war games designed to rehearse responses to fear, loss, failure, threat. Evolution didn't sculpt them to punish you. It gave them to you so you could survive what hasn't happened yet. Nightmares are how the brain runs drills for disaster. Imagine this. Your ancestors are sleeping in a dark cave. Outside, there may be predators, bears, snakes, rival humans. In the safety of sleep, their bodies rest, but the mind doesn't go idle. Instead, it conjures shadows, scenarios, attacks, a wolf charging, a sibling falling, fire in the shelter. And with each nightmare, the brain rehearses how to respond. Faster, smarter, stronger. Survival through simulation. That legacy lives in you. When you dream of falling, it's not just fear. It's the brain testing your reflexes. When you dream of losing someone, it's not random sorrow. It's emotional resilience being stress tested. And when you dream of being chased, your ancient prey instincts are reawakening. The same chemicals that flood your body in real danger, adrenaline, cortisol, norepinephrine, are released in your sleep. The dream isn't just visual, it's physical. Your heart races because your body believes it. Your brain isn't showing you a horror movie, It's dropping you into a live drill. Modern science supports this. Neurologists have found that REM sleep, the stage where dreams are most vivid, is a critical time for memory consolidation and emotional processing. The amygdala, the fear center of the brain, is hyperactive during this phase. It's not a bug. It's the whole point. Your brain wants to scare you, because that fear teaches you. It strengthens neural pathways for future use. Consider the soldier who dreams of being ambushed again and again, or the mother who dreams of losing her child in a crowd. These nightmares aren't abstract. They're sharpened tools, mental rehearsals for the unimaginable, not because it will happen, but because if it does, some part of you will have already lived it. That's not weakness, that's preparedness. Even in children, nightmares serve this function. A child who dreams of monsters under the bed is actually learning to recognize and manage fear. The brain is laying the groundwork for pattern recognition. Something feels wrong. Look for danger. Respond. It's primal. It's instinctive. It's brilliant. But there's a darker truth too. Sometimes the simulations go too far. The brain loops trauma, replaying it not to train, but because it's unresolved. PTSD nightmares are the mind's desperate attempt to process what it couldn't absorb while awake. In these cases, the nightmare becomes a mirror, a scream trapped in repeat. Not a simulation of what might happen, but a replay of what already did. And yet even this, in its own broken way, is an effort to survive, to heal. Nightmares are also brutally honest. In waking life, we hide things. We lie to ourselves. We distract. But in sleep, the mask slips. You dream of betrayal, and you realize who you don't trust. You dream of loss, and you realize what matters most. The mind is unfiltered in sleep, and that rawness is data, information, clues to the emotional puzzles we refuse to solve by daylight. Even artists, philosophers, scientists, many credit dreams with breakthroughs. But behind every brilliant dream is the shadow of a nightmare, because the mind's most creative work often comes wrapped in fear, in struggle, in the confrontation of what we avoid. So why do nightmares feel so real? Because they have to. A simulation that doesn't scare you won't change your behavior. It's the intensity that imprints the lesson. You remember nightmares more than dreams for the same reason a near miss on the highway sticks longer than a normal commute. Fear prioritizes memory. You're wired to remember what might kill you, even if it's imaginary. And yet, for all their horror, nightmares are an act of care. The brain doesn't torment you out of malice. It warns you out of love. It wants you alive, even when you're unconscious, especially then. So the next time you wake from a nightmare, don't dismiss it. Don't curse it. Sit with it. Ask what it's trying to show you, because that terror might just be a message, a rehearsal, a cry from the oldest parts of your mind saying, I've seen the worst, and I'm helping you survive it. Bad dreams aren't flaws in the system. They are the system. You don't suffer nightmares because you're weak. You survive them because you're strong. Character count, 5,220. Breathing is a weak link. Breathing is the most essential act of life. It happens automatically, rhythmically, without thought. And yet, it's built on a dangerous flaw, one of evolution's most unforgiving compromises. We breathe and eat through the same narrow passage, a single tube, a single shared route for air and food. And in that design lies a constant risk, a weak link in the chain of human survival, one that has cost thousands, millions of lives through a simple, tragic event: choking. Most animals don't face this problem. In many mammals, the airway and food pathway are more distinct, but in humans, the throat is a biological bottleneck. The mouth leads to the pharynx, a short but crowded corridor where air and food intersect. From there, the trachea leads to the lungs and the esophagus to the stomach. And perched between them is a fragile gate, the epiglottis, a thin flap of cartilage that must instantly and perfectly decide which passage to seal when we swallow. If it fails, if you laugh while chewing, gasp while eating, or the timing misfires by even a fraction of a second, food can slip into the airway. And suddenly, the body's most basic function becomes a death trap. Choking isn't rare. It kills thousands each year, silently, suddenly. A child with a grape, an elder with dry bread, a healthy adult caught mid-laughter. All it takes is a mistake so small it can't be predicted, yet so deadly it can't be undone. no illness, no injury, just a breath taken at the wrong time. This vulnerability is not a bug. It's a side effect of something evolution valued more: speech. To speak the way humans do, with nuance, pitch, emotion, and complexity, we needed a lower larynx. The voice box had to drop down the throat, giving the tongue more room to shape vowels and consonants. It gave us language, culture, communication, poetry, civilization. But it also removed the anatomical separation between swallowing and breathing. In short, we traded safety for speech. And it wasn't just the larynx that moved. Our whole head and neck structure adapted. The tongue became more agile, the throat elongated. These changes allowed for exquisite control of sound, but they also turned the upper airway into a shared zone, a deadly intersection where food, water, and air must navigate a split-second choreography. Infants show this more clearly. In early life, babies can breathe while nursing, but as they grow, the larynx descends, and that multitasking safety is lost. Suddenly, they too are vulnerable to the risk that defines human adulthood: choking. Other animals rarely face this. Horses, for example, can't vomit or choke easily because their airways are anatomically distinct. Whales and dolphins evolved blowholes, external breathing tubes that avoid this problem altogether. But we kept the old route, because evolution doesn't plan. It only modifies what already exists, one mutation at a time, always trading one risk for another. And yet, we rarely think of this flaw. We eat on the go, talk while chewing, drink while laughing. We expect our throat to navigate the chaos without fail, and most of the time, it does. But when it doesn't, the consequences are swift and cruel. Even modern medicine can't fully solve this. The Heimlich maneuver saves lives, but only if someone nearby knows it. Emergency responders arrive too late more often than not. And for those who survive a choking incident, the trauma lingers, the memory of breath denied, of control slipping away in the most primal way possible. This is the dark side of being human. We speak with brilliance. We share ideas across oceans. We sing, recite, connect through sound. But that gift rests on a fragile, flawed structure. A single breath, one moment too late, can silence a life forever. So when you take your next bite or draw your next breath, pause and realize the precision your body performs every moment. It's a miracle on a knife's edge, an ancient compromise that gave us everything and left us vulnerable in return. We breathe through the same hole we eat through, and that truth, simple and small, is one of evolution's deadliest designs. Consciousness isn't guaranteed. You wake up, you breathe, you think, and somewhere beneath those thoughts, you know you're alive. You're not just reacting, you're aware. That awareness, this fragile, flickering flame we call consciousness, feels like a given, a constant, but it's not. Consciousness isn't guaranteed. It's not a feature evolution set out to build. It's an accident, a side effect, a hallucination that stuck, and like all accidents of biology, it can vanish. Evolution doesn't care about self-reflection. It never did. It rewards behavior that increases survival and reproduction. That's it. A spider spinning a web, a lion stalking prey, neither pauses to ask, what am I? And yet, here we are, humans, creatures that not only exist, but know we exist, that stare into mirrors, write poetry, question mortality, and wonder what consciousness even is. But why? How? The answer may be that it just happened. As brains grew larger and neural networks became more complex, a threshold was crossed. Neurons began firing in patterns so recursive, so self-referential, that the system accidentally became aware of itself. It's as if a flashlight turned in on itself and saw its own beam. Consciousness wasn't engineered, it emerged the way heat emerges from friction, or a whirlpool from water. And that emergence is fragile, because the brain that houses it isn't sacred. It's meat, electrical storms in gray tissue, billions of neurons in a delicate balance. Tilt that balance through trauma, disease, chemistry, and awareness flickers. People lose memories. Identities fracture. Comas swallow whole selves. Even dreams prove that consciousness is not continuous. It's episodic, vulnerable. That's the terrifying truth. Consciousness is not your right. It's a state your brain generates and one it can fail to maintain. Consider anesthesia. A carefully administered chemical cocktail, and you disappear. Not sleep, not numbness, absence, the lights are still on. Your body is functioning. But you, the sense of I, is nowhere. It's proof that the thing we cherish most, our inner voice, our sense of being, is not permanent. It can be turned off and turned back on. But what if, one day, it doesn't come back? Neuroscience still doesn't fully understand what consciousness is. There's no single consciousness center in the brain, no switch. It appears to be a network effect, a synergy of systems, and that means it's not bulletproof. A stroke, a tumor, a disruption in neural communication. And the experience of self begins to erode, and yet, we build worlds upon it. Every law, every belief, every relationship assumes we are conscious, that we are more than machines reacting to stimuli, that something inside is experiencing the ride. But if that something is just a byproduct, just a fluke, then what does that mean for us? It means we're lucky. It means we are living with a gift no one asked for, and few truly understand. It means we may not be at the top of some cosmic hierarchy, but clinging to a rare and temporary light in an otherwise unconscious universe. And there's more. If consciousness emerged once, it could emerge again, or never again. We may be one of the few blips in the vast timeline of existence where the universe got to observe itself. That's what you are, not just alive, but aware. A piece of matter that knows it is matter. That's rare. That's profound. And that is fragile. Some philosophers believe consciousness may be a phase, like childhood or ice, something that occurs under certain conditions and vanishes when those conditions shift. What happens if human minds evolve in ways that no longer require self-awareness? Or if AI surpasses us, intelligent but unconscious, cold processors that never question their own existence? Will consciousness be remembered as a brief shimmer in time, a failed evolutionary detour? Or will we learn to preserve it, to deepen it, to evolve not just biologically but experientially, crafting minds that don't just think better but feel deeper? Because if we lose this, if the voice inside goes silent, nothing else matters. The universe could go on spinning, but it would be blind. Sound without a listener, light without a witness. So remember this, you are a rare accident, a ripple of awareness in a vast sea of matter. Consciousness wasn't designed, but now that it exists, it asks only one thing, that you don't take it for granted.